Meet Taesung. He doesn't need to break a sweat to totally obliterate his rivals. Instead of flexing raw muscle, he cripples them with insane debuffs. One tap, and the beast is counting sheep. Why? Because his level 999 mentor drills one absolute rule into his brain. Needing a second strike is just embarrassing. You gotta wipe them off the map with one swing, and Taesung mastered that assignment perfectly. Rocking the super rare debuff master class, he literally shreds opponent stats. He melts their armor, freezes their agility, nukes their magic shields, and multiplies incoming pain until their HP bar completely evaporates. It doesn't matter if they are a literal god. Once those curses stack high enough, everybody folds to a single, effortless smack. Massive raid bosses stepping up to test him get immediately nerfed into oblivion, meeting the exact same brutal game over screen. But flash back a bit, and our boy wasn't this overpowered yet. He was just a hardcore grinder leading the absolute top-tier faction in the server. Oh, and he happened to flex the ultimate pay-to-win weapon, a legendary magic rod carrying a massive price tag of $75,000. Then, disaster strikes during an all-out turf war against Genesis. His so-called loyal squad stabs him in the back, snatching his priceless gear and tossing it directly to the enemy lines. Stripped of his crew and his endgame loot, his only play is to sprint for his life. Catching his breath behind a massive oak, the brutal reality sets in. Watching his entire empire crumble to ashes, the dude just shatters. Tears streak his face as he fully accepts his incoming doom. His former squad rolls up on his hiding spot, totally shamelessly gripping his hijacked weapon. Their only excuse? Nothing personal, just playing the game. A traitor levels the blazing rod right at Taesung, launching a massive inferno spell. It looks like a guaranteed wrap, but the flames suspiciously vanish mid-air. Out of the smoke steps this absolute unit of an elder. With barely a flick of his wrist, he sends out a shockwave that completely vaporizes the ambush squad. Jaw basically glued to the floor, our MC triggers his observation skill on the boomer, only to see a totally glitched out level 999 floating above his head. His brain short-circuits trying to process the impossible stats. But then the second bombshell drops. This powerhouse isn't even a player, he's a straight-up NPC. The gray-haired legend admits he's been spectating Taesung's journey for ages, totally respecting the kid's relentless grind set. A holographic menu pops up, demanding absolute submission to secure this guy as a master. Taesung eats dirt and bows instantly. Unlocking the crazy Disciple of God starter pack, the duo instantly fast travels to the misty peaks of Mount Kunlun, landing right next to a glassy, tranquil pool. Zero hesitation. The mentor literally Sparta kicks him into the freezing depths. Sinking fast, alarm bells ring as a brutal purification ritual tears through his nervous system. The agony is so raw he almost hits the log out button, but then a massive flashbang of his lowest moments hits him hard. Seeing that backstabber smirking with his stolen loot fuels a crazy rage, making him bite back the pain and tank the torture. 60 minutes of pure hell later, he drags himself out, feeling like an absolute god. But then he checks his player screen, and his heart drops. His hard-earned level 220 is completely gone, replaced by a pathetic level 1. Absolute panic mode activates. The master quickly chills him out, explaining his previous build was complete garbage anyway. A hard factory reset was the only way to break his limits. The silver lining? He just secured a permanent 20% experience boost over every other gamer on the server. Taesung is suddenly hyping up. That hype completely flatlines the second he learns he has to survive that exact same nightmare baptism 100 more times. Fast forward through 99 grueling days of taking icy beatdowns, getting turned into a human pincushion, and surviving endless nightmare scenarios just to clear the questline. Reaching the finale, his mentor finally drops a massive reward. The rookie title is wiped clean. He officially awakens as the mythical debuff master, rebranding his entire identity under the username Siegfried. As a final send-off, the master assigns a mega quest: hunt down and eliminate the 7 heirs tied to an ancient, bloodthirsty rivalry. Booted straight into a dense woodland zone, our newly minted MC immediately locks eyes with a hulking, level 25 mutated big cat. The beast rushes in for the kill, but Siegfried spots something totally bizarre. It's carrying a tiny, caged hamster between its fangs. Snatching up a jagged branch as an improvised blade, he delivers a brutal headshot. The damage text pops up, and it's a fat, embarrassing 0. Time for plan B. He spams his brand new curse skills, completely breaking the monster's armor. One follow-up swing, and the apex predator drops dead. The experience points skyrocket him from level 1 to 15 instantly. He pops open the cage, only for this fuzzy, overweight rodent to start aggressively roasting him. Having zero patience for a sassy furball, our guy just walks off. The rat instantly folds, crying for help, right as the server glitches them into a permanent master pet contract. Now their progression is linked, meaning this little fluff will level up passively. Flexing his new authority, Siegfried decides on a pet name. He looks at this ancient, proud forest spirit and dubs it the absolute goofiest title ever, Ham Ham. The rodent absolutely loses its mind in protest. Waving off the rant, the MC tells his new sidekick to chill because they seriously need to grind for stats. Cut to a bustling guild hall in the main hub, where a gorgeous NPC front desk worker named Jericho hits him with the classic customer service smile, asking what he needs to get done. Leaning against the counter, he drops a simple request. He needs his official mercenary paperwork. To her, it makes total sense. Gaining access to the mission board is practically mandatory if he ever wants to claw his way out of the low-level trenches. But there's a catch. Even though she recognizes he's part of the respawning player base, Jericho slaps down a mandatory combat exam to prove he's actually built for this life. Pitching the idea of grinding some low-tier mobs in the area, our debuff master slammed a crazy drop onto the counter to totally flex his combat stats. The guild NPC immediately zeroed in on it. A legit mutant tiger claw, prime crafting material for early game gear. Our boy started hyping himself up, casually dropping how he absolutely clapped that white beast while strolling into town, proving he was built different and totally ready for that license. The receptionist was mind blown, but still hit him with a reality check, questioning if our guy actually soloed the beast. That quick reality check instantly grounded our undergeared hero. Moving past the flex, the clerk motioned for him to head to the back to finalize the paperwork. A few moments later, boom, official mercenary status unlocked. But right after dropping a quick thanks, the NPC slid him a sudden job offer, instantly hooking our MC's attention. Jericho laid out the grim details. An absolute swarm of mutated freaks was blitzing straight for their territory. A few scouts had already breached the perimeter earlier, traumatizing the locals. It immediately clicked in our hero's head that the spawn rates were getting completely out of hand. The clerk pointed back to that fresh tiger kill, swearing that a mob like that had zero business roaming this zone, and the nightmare was just starting, as insane new variants, like twisted wolves and hulking buffaloes, were suddenly crashing the party. Our debuff master's gamer senses tingled. Why the heck was a level 20 boss chilling in a literal tutorial zone? The game logic was completely broken here. Regardless, the guild officially dropped a defense quest for the barman territory, offering a measly 100 gold. Our guy immediately called out the trash tier payout, prompting the deeply embarrassed NPC to confess our MC was literally the sole player in town, capable of dropping that tiger. Talk about a totally dead server. The clerk dropped the bomb that reinforcements wouldn't arrive for an entire week. Stuck with zero magical comms, our player, who normally completely ignores low-paying garbage quests, decided to bend his own rules, sensing a massive experience farm waiting to happen. Seeing the crazy potential, he locked in, sending the clerk into pure hype mode as our boy officially accepted the mission. Meanwhile, smash cut to the neighboring Schreier Castle, which was now an absolute bloodbath. A desperate survivor dragged himself across the floor begging for his life, only to get instantly sliced in half by a monstrous boss who demanded these pathetic humans kneel before him. Flexing an insane superiority complex, this creature declared himself the ultimate apex predator and their new king. Flashing back to the barman zone, our MC stepped out of an equipment shop, dropping a quick thanks to the merchant. His good mood was instantly wrecked by his savage pet hamster, who casually roasted his fresh drip, joking that he finally stopped looking like a total hobo. Defending his upgrade, our guy mumbled about needing to ditch the starter rags eventually. He was practically vibrating with hype to test drive his brand new mace when his tiny companion suddenly demanded snacks. Our MC completely lost it, yelling at the furball since it literally just inhaled an entire magic stone. But this little mana-eating vacuum clapped back, complaining that such a garbage-tier rock couldn't even touch its appetite, which completely tilted our hero, considering that rock cost him a massive bag of coins. Right before an all-out brawl erupted between man and rodent, 3 random dudes rolled up on him, instantly spotting him as the legend who wrecked the mutant tiger. The loudest of the trio stepped up, introducing himself as Monbok Chang, another player locked in for this insane defense mission. He then pointed out his squad mates, Thompson and Ruigi, who were currently busy fanboying over how cute the hamster was. Sizing them up, our guy connected the dots. These were the backup players the guild clerk warned him about. Keeping things professional, our boy extended a hand, dropping his own username. But before he could even blink, this random trio forcefully crowned him as their raid boss. Chang straight up declared Siegfried had to shot call, purely because he actually had the damage to solo a tiger. Our MC was actually stunned by how shamelessly they admitted they were scrubs. And just like that, a totally scuffed 4-man squad was born. With Thompson demanding a game plan, the newly minted captain broke it down. Going off the guild's intel, their primary drop zone was the butchery ranch, which was currently getting absolutely sieged. Cut to the ranch, where pure chaos was unfolding as players clashed with rabid mobs. Manbok Chang, currently fighting for his life against a single wolf, screamed for Thompson to pull aggro. On cue, a spear instantly pierced the demonic mutt, and while the chubby veteran player stood there wheezing, wishing he had his younger reflexes back, his spear-wielding bro caught sight of a massive shadow barreling their way. Manbok whipped his head around, staring down a terrifying level 25 mutated buffalo that was bulldozing straight through the battlefield like a freight train. While the rest of the squad desperately dive-bombed out of the kill zone, our MC read the movement perfectly. He instantly cast Heavy Strike onto his mace, sprinted head-on at the tanky beast, and absolutely caved its skull in. The monstrous buffalo completely crumpled to the dirt, pushing our boy straight into level 20 territory. But the strategist, sweating over his secret class getting exposed to randoms, instantly regretted teaming up. He realized that a solo run would have been vastly superior, because popping his insane debuff skills in front of an audience was a massive risk. His two teammates rushed over to check his health, but he quickly brushed them off, swearing he didn't take a single scratch. Siegfried barely had a second to ask if they survived that brutal smash, before the big guy brushed it off. Not a single scratch on him. Perks of being a literal meat shield, right? His buddy, though? Absolutely out of commission, aggressively chugging a health potion just to stay upright. Manbok Jong immediately started hyping Siegfried up for one-shotting the beast. Honestly, totally on brand for the guy who literally soloed a tiger. Our boy tried to play it cool, but the vibe suddenly shifted. A massive, eerie screech echoed out, commanding the horde to fall back into the deep woods. The tank started celebrating, convinced they just cleared the quest and secured the win. But Siegfried's instincts were screaming that something was way off. Mindless beasts do not just march in perfect synchronization. Someone, or something, was clearly pulling the strings from the shadows. Right on cue, the system hit him with a massive notification. A chain quest just dropped, demanding he uncover the dark secret behind this mutant hive mind. The grind was far from over. Without missing a beat, he told his squad to fall back to the safe zone at the barracks. He was going totally rogue to track the horde's movements. His party started stressing hard, but our main character shut down their worries instantly. His health bar was maxed out, making him the only one equipped for a stealth mission. Plus, his tiny furball companion puffed up its chest, swearing to protect him. The tank was speechless, while the potion-chugging buddy practically melted over the overwhelming cuteness of the little guy. Fast forward a bit, and Siegfried was deep in enemy territory. His gut feeling was dead on. The tracks were carved into the dirt in a single, massive trail. Connecting the dots, he realized this mutant army was gearing up to obliterate the territory right next door. But before he could process the sheer scale of the threat, his pet desperately tugged at him. The debuff master almost scolded the little dude for wandering off, but the furball frantically shook its head, gesturing wildly toward a massive, imposing shadow looming in the distance. It was none other than the legendary Schreier Castle. The place radiated pure, unsettling silence, but the second he nudged the heavy doors open, his jaw practically dropped to the floor. Hundreds of terrifying mutants were kneeling in total submission, and chilling on the throne, the infamous Gorgor. We are talking about the ultimate goblin lord, with insanely broken mind control powers, a legendary golden boss that spawns maybe once every couple hundred years. Siegfried froze, the horrifying reality clicking into place. This ultra-rare boss was the mastermind orchestrating the entire mutant invasion. His hamster squeaked, basically asking, "What is the play here, boss?" But Siegfried knew going in blindly was pure suicide. They had to ghost the area and hit the barracks, fast. Cutting back to the base camp, a high-ranking officer walked up, totally regretting not giving a proper handshake earlier. The bald titan introduced himself as Bullrich, the top dog of the Bierman forces. After Siegfried dropped his own name, the commander hyped him up, revealing that Jericho had already spilled the tea on his crazy feats. Bullrich wanted to chat more, but the vibes were way too intense. Time was ticking dangerously fast, so he skipped the small talk. He looked Siegfried dead in the eye, repeating the insane intel about the neighboring region getting absolutely overrun. He needed to know right then and there, were the goblins really the ones pulling the strings? Our boy did not sugarcoat it. He laid out the terrifying truth. This was not just a goblin mob. It was a singular, overpowered lord with mind control hacks who literally hijacked the local beasts to claim Schreier Castle. And guess what? Their Bierman territory was next on the chopping block. Panic instantly erupted. One soldier practically lost it, screaming that if this intel was legit, it was game over. A goblin lord would wipe the floor with them. Siegfried commanded them to sound the alarm and evacuate every single civilian, leaving the commander in a heavy, brooding silence. Breaking the tension, the tank jumped in, dropping a massive reality check. How on earth did a neighboring region fall without anyone here noticing a single thing? Bullrich sighed, exposing their biggest flaw. Both territories were totally off the grid, lacking the magical tech to send quick warning signals. They were basically flying blind. Siegfried quickly connected the remaining dots. The Bierman army was way too busy fighting off endless monster waves to even check their borders, which meant the Goblin Lord had played them all. He purposely spammed them with mutants to isolate their territory, completely cutting them off from the outside world. Realizing their 300-year-old legacy was about to get wiped out by literal goblins hit the higher-ups like a truck. The pure frustration in the room was suffocating. Nobody even had the guts to deliver this nightmare news to their supreme leader. But before all hope completely died, our protagonist smirked. He had a counterattack ready. Bullrich locked onto him, desperate for any shred of hope. Siegfried laid out the ultimate gamble, explaining that if they could just stall for time, they could actually flip the script and go on the offensive. But for this to work, he desperately needed to power level. The strategy was insanely risky, but straight up brilliant. Bullrich had to assemble an elite squad of his fastest runners, turning them into absolute bait to scatter the horde. These guys would literally kite the massive mob of monsters directly into Siegfried's kill zone, setting up the ultimate farming spot for him. The debuff master promised that the second he hit level 30, he would dive straight into the main boss raid. The commander hesitated. He knew this rookie was leveling up at a terrifying pace, but he had to drop a brutal truth bomb. The golden boss was chilling at a monstrous level 50. That meant a massive, 20-level gap that could easily result in instant death. Siegfried did not deny it. The stats were heavily stacked against him. But let's not forget, this absolute madman folded a level 25 tiger when he was just level 1. He totally had a genuine shot at sending this goblin lord straight back to the lobby. And worst case scenario, he dies buying them the exact window they need to survive, waiting for the cavalry to roll in. After a quick mental debate, the bald commander just shrugs and greenlights our boy's strategy. The second Siegfried bags a fresh quest to absolutely demolish the boss. His furry little sidekick speaks up. Siegfried instantly shoots him down, claiming his wallet is totally empty. The furball practically pops a vein, barking that this isn't about snacks, which definitely piques his master's curiosity. Our summoner is honestly low-key stunned that his pet sniffed out his massive secret, and now the fluffball is demanding answers. Flexing his ego, the tiny beast brags that top-tier spirits, like himself, pack insane observation stats. Caving in, the adventurer reveals that hitting level 30 unlocks a broken new ability, a skill called Supreme Contempt. It's the ultimate trump card against the Goblin Lord. Even if it doesn't guarantee an easy W, the hamster tilts his head, wondering why his master is playing his cards so close to the chest. Siegfried drops the harsh truth with random players lurking everywhere. Gossip spreads faster than a glitch, and he can't risk the whole server finding out about his OP stats. The Great Spirit rolls his eyes, roasting him for overcomplicating things, but Siegfried doubles down, stating that staying off the radar prevents fatal backstabs. Their chat gets cut short when the tanker chimes in, checking if they finished, hashing things out with the bald commander. Siegfried drops a quick, "my bad," for making himself the main character of this strategy, but the squad is totally on board. Calling it a night, the swordsman hits the logout button, but not before dragging our hero for hardcore no-lifing the game. Siegfried agrees it's time to touch some grass. As his party members vanish offline, the tiny furball looks up and asks if his master is finally logging out too. Siegfried nods, slipping the little guy some cash for a snack. The hamster practically vibrates with joy, suddenly realizing his master totally capped about being flat broke earlier. Cut to the real world, where the truth hits the fan. Yanked back into reality, the gamer climbs out of his busted capsule, wincing as a sharp pain shoots up his spine. His stomach is screaming for a meal, but remembering he's racing against the clock, he forces himself to just crash and sleep. Staring at the ceiling, the absolute chaos of the past few days hits him. Beamer got completely wiped off the map, turning him into a literal fugitive. He replays that insane moment he snagged a secret class, right after bumping into Deus, and how the massive burden of protecting Beamer now rests entirely on his shoulders. Honestly, he originally dove into Brave New World just to secure the bag and dish out some sweet revenge. But now, he's genuinely hooked. A tiny smile creeps up his face, his inner child is thriving. Pumping himself up, he ditches the whole get some rest idea, desperate to dive back into the grind. Missing his virtual sidekick, he completely scraps his bedtime and gears up to grind out some serious levels before the final boss brawl. Suddenly, a heavy knock echoes through the apartment, with a voice demanding his exact name. Totally weirded out since 0 people ever visit him, he cracks the door open a few inches. 2 bulky delivery guys announce they're here to install a brand new VR rig. Siegfried instantly hits the brakes, swearing he didn't buy squat. But the crew isn't backing down, flashing a delivery slip with his exact name and coordinates printed right on it. Ready to start swinging, he pauses when the worker throws his hands up, claiming he's just a grunt following corporate instructions. before shoving a sealed envelope into his hands. The letter inside casually congratulates him for cracking code 007, making everything click. This is about his legendary debuff master title. The forum gossip wasn't capping after all. Players with secret classes actually rake in massive real-world perks. It dawns on him that the developers at Hive literally just sponsored his setup. The dude's entire vibe shifts from defensive to hyped as he swings the door wide open, rolling out the red carpet and offering the guys cold drinks. The workers are totally thrown off by the instant mood swap. Meanwhile, lurking in the shadows outside, a shady dude in a suit is stalking the whole interaction. This Mr. Lee gets a quick good job from his boss for verifying the super rig is safely sitting in our boy's living room. When the underling questions why, the company is just dropping an insanely pricey VR tank on a total random. The big boss totally stumbles over his words. He covers it up by claiming a weird brotherhood with the kid, since they both rock a secret job class. Back inside, Siegfried recognizes this insane machine from flashy TV ads starring the Genesis Guildmaster. It's the Ogre model, a luxury, top-tier gaming rig, so notoriously expensive that normal players don't even let themselves dream about it. And now, this absolute beast of a machine is sitting dead center in his apartment. He's basically drooling over the sleek tech, brain still melting over the fact that Hive gifted him gear that easily costs tens of thousands of dollars, even secondhand, all for unlocking code 007. Hyped beyond belief, the hero kicks his nap schedule out the window to take this bad boy for a test drive. The moment he logs in, the insane comfort level completely bodies his trash old rig, hitting him with graphics so crisp it makes real life look blurry. His in-game senses are dialed up to 11, letting him actually feel the scorching heat and crackling flames in the air. But just as he's processing, realizing his senses were totally glitching out, curiosity got the best of him. But reality hit hard. He was staring dead at a village fully engulfed in flames. Total, absolute carnage. Mutated beasts were absolutely flattening the royal guard, while twisted little goblins practically giggled as they carved them up. Our boy was completely stunned, struggling to process the nightmare. Suddenly, a desperate shriek ripped through the chaos. It wasn't a person, but his furry sidekick. The little guy was sprinting for his absolute life, legs turning to jelly with a rabid mutant wolf hot on his tail. The furball wailed that a majestic, divine beast like himself refused to go out like an appetizer. But just as those jaws snapped shut for a midnight snack, bam! Siegfried crashed the party, bringing his heavy mace straight down onto the mutt's skull. The tiny furball froze, utterly shell-shocked, seeing that his boss actually showed up. Siegfried leaned in to make sure his pet was breathing, but the little guy instantly rocketed straight into his face, screeching about how his master was chilling in the real world, while he was out here becoming dog food. Siegfried ignored the rant, demanding a quick sit-rep. The hamster practically spat back that the math was obvious. The exact millisecond the player base logged off, that massive goblin lord and his entire freak show army blitzed the settlement. And honestly, their raw power was absolutely insane, meaning the local NPC guards never stood a ghost of a chance. Hearing this cowardly strategy completely set Siegfried off, launching a raid while everyone was away from keyboard. Super cheap. Then it hit him like a freight train. He was literally the only active user left on the entire map. The furious furball nodded, yelling that this solo status was exactly why they were doomed. But instead of panicking, our guy just smirked, calling it an absolute win. No witnesses meant no holding back. The hamster's blood ran cold, instantly realizing his crazy boss was about to drag him into the madness. Cut back to the front lines. A grimy goblin happily licked fresh crimson off his jagged blade, his entire squad practically foaming at the mouth for more carnage. They completely boxed in the remaining guards, who were sweating bullets trying to shield the terrified civilians huddled behind them. Then, a guard captain's stomach dropped. They were utterly trapped, and with half the townspeople still stuck inside the walls, he had zero escape routes against this massive swarm. Watching this hopeless standoff from afar just seriously ticked Han off. Right when the captain braced for the ultimate game over, watching a feral goblin lunge with a massive meat cleaver, then, boom, a massive mace flew out of nowhere, absolutely shattering the monster's skull. The guard's jaw hit the dirt. In a flash, a dark blur bolted past and snatched the weapon right out of the air. It was our boy Han, glowing with intense energy as he triggered his heavy strike ability, before brutalizing the twitching goblin one more time for good measure. The stunned guard instantly realized who this absolute unit was. Then, Siegfried didn't waste time, bluntly stating he understood the assignment. He ordered the troops to evacuate the innocents immediately, while he personally took out the trash. But the proud captain hesitated, arguing that letting a hired blade fight alone was totally messed up, or so he thought. The NPC was left utterly speechless as the young man just smiled, thanked him for the vibe check, and instantly popped his 2 nerfing auras. Dark energy rippled outward, drastically crippling every monster in the zone. Taesung Han coolly glanced back, declaring he preferred to handle his business as a lone wolf. The rookies looked totally lost, but the captain got the message loud and clear. So with that being said, tossing over a heavy belt packed with healing potions, the guard offered his only support, earning a solid nod of respect from our hero. The captain muttered that dumping this nightmare on a freelancer completely shattered his pride as a soldier. Yet, he swallowed his ego and prioritized survival. Watching them retreat, Taesung figured nobody was around to snitch. If the game's NPCs caught a glimpse of his god-tier stats, suddenly, his danger senses spiked to max. He yanked his mace up, barely parrying the vicious jaws of a leaping mutant wolf. Without missing a beat, a sneaky goblin tried to third-party him and swing a rusty shiv at his ribs. But Han simply kicked the wolf away and casually sidestepped the fatal swipe like it was nothing. Seeing these mobs relentlessly lock onto him, the debuff master smirked, realizing his toxic aura was acting like a massive aggro magnet. The green gremlin started wildly swinging combos, but our boy just laughed, utterly roasting the monster's garbage footwork before mocking the creature, telling it that running for the hills the second those auras dropped was its only winning play. Honestly, this was tutorial-level stuff for him. He brutally palmed the goblin's ugly face and spiked it straight into the pavement, bragging that he could wipe this floor even without his cheat skills. In that exact moment, a massive realization hit him on exactly why his shiny new armor drained his wallet. His spatial awareness was off the charts compared to his trash-tier old equipment. Combine that pay-to-win gear with the insane reflex training he survived under Deus, and the protagonist felt absolutely untouchable. As he mercilessly carved through the mob, he had a major epiphany. This was the ultimate secret of pay-to-win whales. They had been cruising on easy mode using top-tier legendary gear from day one. Fired up by this revelation, Han flawlessly comboed 3 brutal heavy strikes in a row, finally dinging level 22. But looking at his stat screen, he groaned. Despite the mountain of corpses, the experience bar barely moved, proving that the high-level grind was an absolute nightmare after level 20. His thoughts were violently interrupted when his hamster sprinted back into view, screaming absolute murder, with a literal tidal wave of monsters chasing right behind him. Sprinting for his life, lungs burning, the little guy screamed at his boss, asking if they had hit the magic number yet. But our main guy, he was completely locked in. He literally could not care less about the insane grind to level up. The mission was dead simple. Obliterate every single monster in his path. Boom. Skills activated. A split second later, Gorgon sensed some totally obnoxious energy crashing the party from the outside. Absolute pandemonium broke loose. Crushing a dude under his heavy boot, Gorgon scoffed, calling this newcomer a low-level pest, but one that could seriously level up into a massive headache if they let him cook. Then, the beast dropped a bombshell. This new arrival hit totally different from the mob he just wiped the floor with. Bleeding out on the ground, the battered commander put 2 and 2 together. The mystery powerhouse? It was our boy, the protagonist. Clutching his broadsword with a trembling but iron-tight grip, the commander braced himself. His only goal? Buy our hero every single second possible to secure that level-up buff. The bald warrior was absolutely dialed in. He was ready to gatekeep that golden goblin hard, roasting the creature as a total wimp and swearing to end its entire career right there. Honestly, the trash talk just made the goblin lord crack up. Getting roasted by some weakling? Hilarious. Especially by a dude too frail to even shield his own king. Flexing his dark aura, the boss decided to serve up the exact beatdown the guy was begging for. He casually warned that neither the knight nor his precious ruler had much time left on the clock. The sheer killing intent sent the commander into full panic mode. He desperately prayed for our hero to level up, fast. Flashback to 30 minutes ago. Ham was straight up refusing his side quest. Playing bait and getting munched by monstrous freaks? Hard pass. But our hero was not taking no for an answer, making it clear they had zero choice. If he did not secure that massive power spike immediately, it was game over. Do nothing, and the whole squad gets permanently wiped from the server. Still, the fluffy little dude was not exactly vibing with being collateral damage in his master's insane quest. But our boy clapped back, reminding the furball that they were a duo now. Ride or die, frontline together. Locking eyes, he dropped the ultimate trust card, swearing he believed in the little guy. Reluctantly, the hamster caved. The price? A massive, mountain-sized payout of premium nuts. Deal sealed. Snapping back to real time, Siegfried was out here trying to say sorry to his heavily pouting pet, but Ham was absolutely furious about being used as bait and demanded an end to the disrespect. So, brushing it off, Siegfried tossed him a quick thanks for carrying and reminded him they were racing the clock. The debuff master tried cooling his temper, flexing that the mob was fully cleared. Big mistake. That just triggered the hamster more, knowing damn well his bait tactics hard carried the entire play. Pivoting hard, Siegfried asked his spirit companion if he pulled off the secondary side quest. The furball squeaked out his report. He did not have the boss totally pinged on the map, but he caught a solid vibe of its spawn point. Our hero was all ears. Turns out, while sprinting for his absolute life from the horde, Ham caught a split-second glimpse of the main castle. It completely paralyzed him. A thick, suffocating wave of pure, unadulterated evil was bleeding right through the fortress walls. The pet swore that kind of demonic energy had to be the Golden Goblin. That is when it clicked for our hero. This freak was not just a boss, he was the literal king of goblins. Logically, the human lord of that castle should be safe, since VIPs always dip first when things go south. Still, a gut-wrenching dread hit him. The missing commander was a massive red flag. Trusting his instincts, he slammed his foot on the gas to rush ahead, leaving the great forest spirit entirely shook. Trying to be a good bro, he told his pet to camp outside the aggro zone. But the second Ham saw a dead monster's head randomly twitch. Pure nightmare fuel. Terrified out of his mind, the little guy bolted right after his master, straight into the Goblin Lord's hellish turf. Fast forward, they pulled up to a massive, blazing castle. The sheer scale of the inferno left our hero completely speechless. But Tae Sung Han snapped back to reality. Rushing in blind without a strategy was straight-up unalive behavior. Pausing the raid for a second, he glanced down at his trembling furball. He legit asked why the little guy was even tagging along into a literal death trap. Shaking like a leaf, the pet fired back. He claimed he was just pulling up to provide some much-needed backup. Honestly, our hero was not buying that brave act for a single second. Deflecting the awkwardness, the spirit demanded to know the game plan. They were literally about to square up against an apex goblin lord, a boss that might legit tank all their damage. But dropping the ultimate wildcard, his master actually agreed with the logic, only to declare they had zero time to strategize. Sometimes, you just have to throw hands, crank up the brute force, and full send it into the chaos. He blitzed the castle like a madman. Right as Ham started screaming about his owner being totally unhinged, he violently shattered the front gates and stormed the hall. Ham absolutely lost it, yelling at him for breaching the entrance. Instead of just turning the knob like a normal person, shushing his pet, our hero instantly locked onto something seriously messed up. It was the bleeding commander, smirking through the pain, joking that he totally called that dramatic entrance. Our hero sprinted over, horrified by the guy's cleanly severed arm. He demanded to know why the knight had not dipped with the rest of the VIPs. Coughing up blood, Bullrich swore that broken or not, a true knight never abandons his king. That dark realization hit our hero like a truck. The ruler of Beerman was trapped inside. Right then, a spine-chilling, pitch-black voice echoed through the hall, calling out Tae Sung Han's exact name. The absolute menace wiping out the entire squad? That was Gorgon. This golden beast was literally dangling the bleeding commander by his arm, bragging that our boy was the toughest human he had ever scrapped with. It totally explained his relentless push. Catching those twisted words, Siegfried just stood there, totally lost. But the golden freak smirked, swearing he knew exactly what was going down. The monster straight up accused our MC of using his own troops as human meat shields, just to buy enough time to grind his levels. Hearing this monster trash talk, the fallen squad, Siegfried's blood absolutely boiled. Pure, unadulterated rage. But the battered commander coughed, begging the hero to ignore the bait since holding the line was their sworn duty. Locking eyes with him, Siegfried asked if that knocked-out guy slumped behind the boss was actually the Lord of Beerman. A weak nod confirmed it. Instantly, our MC told the veteran to hang tight, while the bleeding soldier desperately warned him not to let the goblin get inside his head. Gorgon just laughed, totally convinced that crushing guilt had already shattered the human's mental state completely. Watching Siegfried literally put his weapon away, the boss lunged in for the instant kill, loudly declaring that this exact weakness was exactly why humanity was always catching back-to-back losses. But, plot twist, the debuff master instantly triggered his speed restriction skill. The monster's momentum completely tanked. In a blink, Gorgon was just violently slicing through dead air. The Goblin Lord froze, suddenly paranoid that he had just walked straight into a massive trap since his target had completely vanished. Out of nowhere, the debuff master's voice pierced the silence, coldly commanding the beast to drop the soldier's arm. That insane level of disrespect completely triggered the Goblin King. He rushed our boy, absolutely fuming that a puny human dared to boss him around, while casually carrying the unconscious lord. But our guy was way too clean with it, launching the giant boss airborne with one brutal kick. Right then, the beast finally felt the main character's raw pressure. At first, he assumed the human had popped a crazy speed buff, but quickly tossed that theory out the window. The horrible truth? Invisible chains were literally dragging his own movements down to an absolute crawl. Completely tilted, the golden giant roared, demanding to know what kind of sorcery this was. Seeing the boss panic actually made Siegfried realize that his debuff was insanely overpowered. Without breaking a sweat, the adventurer casually tossed the commander his severed arm back, figuring a dead limb was way safer with its owner than inside a goblin's filthy claws. Turning to the bald veteran, he calmly told him to sit back and watch the show, deeply acknowledging that their massive sacrifices were the only reason he managed to level up. The debuff master then called out his secret weapon, his pet hamster, telling the little guy to stop camping and escort the wounded out of the danger zone. The furball instantly snapped to attention. But when the commander politely asked the tiny beast to handle the unconscious lord a bit more gently, it caught major attitude. Anyway, with the casualties finally safely out of the blast radius, only one objective remained. It was time to absolutely shred the goblin lord, who was practically foaming at the mouth to butcher our boy. With zero distractions left on the entire battlefield, Siegfried cracked a cold smile, fully ready to enjoy tearing this arrogant boss apart. The deathmatch officially kicked off, and despite being severely nerfed, the monster swung his massive axe. But our MC gracefully dodged it, instantly retaliating with a brutal barrage of mace strikes. This completely enraged the Golden Giant, who violently slammed our hero straight into the solid dungeon wall. Reality hit Siegfried fast, scrapping. Against this insane level gap was definitely no joke. Plus, the terrifying part, the monster's muscle memory was already adapting to the speed nerf. Gorgon immediately mocked the MC, asking where all that main character energy went. He completely roasted the human, calling him an absolute clown for actually thinking some cheap parlor tricks were enough to solo a boss of his tier. And right while the giant goblin kept yapping about torturing our boy and painfully ripping him apart piece by piece, the adventurer had to swallow a bitter pill. His speed restriction was definitely clutch, but at the end of the day, it was literally just a support skill. Siegfried was painfully aware that his raw base stats were way too low to chain it with any heavy-hitting combo attacks. He seriously regretted holding onto his ultimate move for so long. For a split second, he actually considered just dropping the debuff altogether, but instantly scrapped that thought, holding out for a perfect window to strike. Full sending it, he dashed straight at the monster, who smirked, genuinely thinking the human was dumb enough to engage in hand-to-hand combat. Still, the boss stayed super paranoid about another potential trap. Boom! The David and Goliath clash completely shook the room. The Golden Goblin absolutely reveled in watching the human struggle and suffer, raining down heavy, bone-crushing blows. The beast actually taunted the MC to dodge faster, bragging that without his little gimmicks, the human was absolute trash. Out of nowhere, the boss grabbed Tae Sung Han by the throat, delivering a brutal chokeslam that launched him entirely across the cavern. Hitting the stone hard, our boy violently coughed up blood. Towering over his broken body, the goblin started to monologue, venting about how humanity always treated his kind like mindless savages. And honestly, he couldn't even argue, since pure weakness was literally baked into their DNA from day one. But this golden mutant absolutely refused to accept that tragic fate. He was determined to rewrite history and elevate his people to absolute godhood, aiming to make goblins the ultimate nightmare for both humans and the top-tier races. Flexing his crown, Gorgon roared that breaking the system was his ultimate, self-imposed destiny. That kind of grand vision was completely over a mere mercenary's head. But our boy wasn't having it, clapping back that mindless violence wouldn't earn this boss an ounce of respect. He roasted the entire goblin race, calling them nothing but overgrown cowards. The relentless trash talk absolutely nuked the boss's ego, making his blood boil. Blinded by pure rage, the monster swung his massive weapon for a lethal strike. And boom, that was the exact opening our hero had been baiting out. Siegfried perfectly timed the cancellation of his slow debuff, dropping it right as that devastating attack came crashing down. The sudden shift in momentum completely wrecked the monster's balance, sending his massive blade burying itself deep into the dirt. In that split second, panic flashed across the boss's face as he realized he had walked straight into a trap. Without missing a beat, our guy went absolutely feral, raining down brutal mace strikes until the Goblin Lord was completely cornered. But right before delivering the execution, a piercing whistle ripped through the air. The debuff master instantly sensed danger, snapping his head back just in time to see a massive mount barreling straight toward him. A brutal impact sent Siegfried flying across the courtyard, while Gorgon smugly claimed he had only been holding back to spare the castle from getting wrecked. The Goblin King admitted he was actually impressed, shocked that a flimsy human forced him to sweat this much. But the warm-up was officially over, as the monster revealed his ultimate trump card, a terrifying mind control ability. He channeled this dark power straight into his prized mutant creation, commanding the colossal beast to tear the young warrior apart. Moving like a lightning bolt, the mutated tiger launched forward, crushing our hero against the stone masonry with bone-shattering force. Gorgon completely lost it, cackling like a maniac, while taunting that bleeding out inside a royal fortress was a luxury. But wiping the blood from his chin, Siegfried locked eyes with the monster and dropped a cold truth bomb. He promised the goblin that only one of them was leaving in a body bag. Flashing back to that arrogant, lowly mercenary insult, he scoffed at the idea of not grasping the bigger picture. In a split second, the air grew incredibly heavy. Siegfried popped his ultimate skill, Supreme Contempt. This insane debuff completely tanked the boss's attack damage, while supercharging the pain he received, turning the massive level gap between Tai-Sung Han and the beast into a lethal weapon. Launching himself at the stunned monster, he screamed that he was no standard sword for hire, he was the one and only debuff master. After completely folding the golden goblin and securing the quest completion screen, Tai-Sung Han flexed his destiny, swearing he would climb straight to the top of this world. With the hype fading, a breathtaking sunset painted the sky. What an absolutely wild ride today had been. The death of the boss instantly shattered the mind control over the remaining monster horde. Down in the ruins, Manbok-jang casually slapped a confused grunt upside the head, finally realizing that the absolute madman actually cleared the impossible quest. With the goblin threat fully wiped off the map, the survivors rallied together, shrugging off their scrapes to start rebuilding their shattered home. Cut to the military camp, where our exhausted guy was absolutely chugging a health potion, like a college kid crushing an energy drink. Watching his hit points refill brought a massive grin to his face, drawing weird stares as he yelled that an ice-cold potion hits different after carrying a boss fight. Internally, he was still buzzing over the fact that he managed to solo a golden-tier enemy. But the reality check hit hard if his mana bar had been completely dry for that final ultimate cast. That oversized monster would have turned him into a floor mat. That specific skill, feeding purely off level gaps, absolutely outclassed every other nerf in his arsenal. Given the agonizingly long cooldown timer, he swore to keep it as an emergency panic button. Just as he was stressing about how his broken abilities were basically public knowledge now, a familiar face walked up to check on his battle scars. It was none other than the bald commander, now rocking an empty sleeve. Bullrich immediately hyped up the young warrior's insane resilience, noticing the color already returning to his face. When asked if he wanted to sleep it off, the tough veteran shrugged, saying he was losing his mind sitting around, and that the local ruler ordered him to escort our hero straight to the royal chambers. This instantly made Siegfried question the ruler's status, considering the guy looked practically dead a few hours ago. Bullrich flashed a grin, revealing that his master somehow pulled through, entirely thanks to the main character stepping up, and was actually bouncing back pretty fast. Chuckling deeply, the commander bragged about his master having the iron constitution of a frontline brawler. Siegfried raised an eyebrow, remembering a very frail-looking dude, before his eyes drifted down to the pinned-up fabric where the veteran's arm used to hang. Guilt washed over Tai-Sung Han, and he quickly apologized, blaming himself for showing up too late to save the limb. But the bald beast of a man immediately cut him off. He felt absolutely zero regret, insisting that this kid's epic clutch was the only reason their territory wasn't a smoking crater, making a single missing arm a super cheap price for peace. Calling him out as a totally legendary knight, the debuff master actually made the hardened soldier blush. Eager to change the subject, Bullrich urged him to hustle, since the VIPs were anxiously waiting. Pushing open the massive fortress doors, they were instantly greeted by a heavily shaking Baron Bergman. The Lord locked eyes with our MC, instantly recognizing the absolute legend who just dragged his entire territory back from the brink of destruction. Honestly, our guy was just hyped to see the old man breathing. He dropped his name Siegfried, and you could literally see the awe wash over the noble's face. Wanting to flex his massive gratitude, the Baron went straight for a deep bow, but our hero immediately waved it off, basically telling him to chill. Crack! Out of nowhere, a vicious spasm wrecked the old guy's back, sending him crumbling to the floor while his guards absolutely panicked. Watching this pathetic scene unfold, Siegfried raised an eyebrow, low-key remembering how the commander hyped up the Baron's so-called ironclad health. Scrambling to save face, the Lord muttered a quick apology about his lingering injuries, pivoting right back to showering our boy with endless praise. Keeping it totally humble, Siegfried brushed off the hype, claiming he was just a hired gun securing the bag, and definitely didn't deserve all this glazing. But the Baron wasn't having any of that false modesty, shutting him down by pointing out how he literally snatched Bierman from the jaws of death. Our MC threw his own life on the line, single-handedly ripping their peaceful sanctuary straight out of those filthy goblin claws. Boom. Tai-Sung Han's eyes practically lit on fire the second the Lord mentioned a little thank you present. He knew instantly this was the juicy quest drop. Riding that massive adrenaline high, our guy shadowed the old man's every step, desperately praying the upcoming loot would actually justify the insane grind he just went through. Stepping deep into the castle guts, the hero suddenly froze, recognizing the exact room where he absolutely brawled that Gorgon, completely stunned by its insanely massive scale. The sheer vibe of the place screamed ancient altar, while the Lord lore dropped how his artifact-hoarding ancestor constructed this colossal vault, purely to flex his rare stash. Tragically, the vault was basically running on fumes now, with almost everything else either tragically lost to time or hawked for cash. And with that heavy history out of the way, the noble handed over the absolute final treasure worth a damn in this entire room. Snapping the box open, our MC's jaw literally dropped to the floor, staring dead at a legendary golden ticket for the Mercedes Atelier. Let's rewind. Since the ancient days, this world leveled up its magic, tech, and blacksmithing in perfect harmony. For thousands of years, these three skill trees just kept grinding upward until the lines between them completely vanished, merging into one cracked superpower that birthed artifacts, the absolute god-tier fusion of hammering steel, casting spells, and brewing alchemy. Eventually, three megacorporations put the artifact market in a chokehold, starting with Autonica, the undisputed kings of sci-fi level gadgets. Right behind them was Basta Carmelion, infamous for forging the most lethal, bloodthirsty weapons imaginable. But standing at the absolute summit was the Mercedes Atelier. Every single one of these titans commanded massive respect across the map, cementing their legacy as the untouchable Big Three. And right here, the grand prize for bodying that goblin boss was a literal VIP pass, unlocking the premium services of the most overpowered workshop in existence. Reading the fine print, our boy realized this crazy slip of paper guaranteed 12 flawless upgrades on any gear, totally bypassing level caps, leaving him completely utterly spellbound. We are talking about an item that easily smashes past the 1,000 gold mark. The old man then dropped some crazy lore. 700 years ago, a struggling starter-level Mercedes was bleeding cash fast, forcing them to hustle these passes for 1,000 gold just to keep the lights on. Honestly, back in that era, dropping that kind of coin on a no-name startup was an insanely risky gamble. But out of nowhere, an absolute Chad stepped up and completely wiped out their financial nightmare. That legendary angel investor? None other than the Baron's own bloodline, Count Graham. Nobody really knows if the guy was playing four-dimensional chess making a genius trade, or just throwing pity money around, but that single purchase snowballed into massive wealth. Staring deeply at our MC, the Lord declared that this priceless artifact finally landed in the hands of a true king. Sweating a bit, Siegfried tried to backpedal, protesting that this loot drop was way too heavy, carrying a street value that could literally buy a city. But the old guy just smiled, swearing he was never actually the true owner anyway, since fate dictated it belonged to whichever heir of the count actually proved themselves worthy. Plot twist: that prodigy kid literally never spawned into existence, and watching the Lord choke on his words trying to hype up his own son's potential, our MC instantly connected the dots. The kid was absolute trash tier. Shifting the vibe, the weary noble cashed in a favor, instantly hooking the protagonist's attention. He painted the picture of that chaotic battlefield, revealing how he briefly regained consciousness while being hauled to safety, giving him a front row seat to the sheer, untamed absolute fire raging inside the young warrior's eyes. Siegfried low-key started blushing as the old man dumped a truckload of compliments on him, dramatically claiming that, in that split second, he knew this kid was hardwired to conquer the world and shatter the fame scales. Leading right up to the punchline, the Baron confessed the real reason he was begging for help was all about carrying his useless son. The old man practically poured his heart out, looking to drop a massive investment into our hero, mirroring his legendary ancestor, banking entirely on his gut feeling despite his own weird flaws. Taking a beat to chew on the offer, the protagonist finally locked in. The second he shook hands on babysitting the noble's kid, a brand new quest window completely shattered his vision, tasking him with tracking down the heir in the capital to officially clear his debt. But wait, the absolute worst realization suddenly hit our guy like a truck, making him feel insanely finessed when it clicked that he totally could have bagged that priceless ticket without accepting this annoying escort mission. Fuming internally, he stomped right out of the fortress. Our boy was seriously stressing over his next move with that god-tier coupon. He totally knew that pawning it off would secure the ultimate bag, wiping out his massive debt and scoring his mom a luxury penthouse. But then, reality hit. He could vividly picture his master absolutely tweaking, screaming at him for being a total bot before literally beating the stupidity out of him. So, he chose to stash the ticket for the long game, figuring he could grind for cash elsewhere. Suddenly, Siegfried realized his furball was completely missing in action, having ghosted him all day. The hero practically prayed his pet wasn't cooking up some sketchy side hustle again. Cut to the great forest spirit, literally throwing it back. The fuzzy menace was shaking its belly for a crowd, hyping them up for validation. While the adventurers were hardcore simping over its absolute cuteness, the spirit made it crystal clear. This wasn't charity work. Getting the hint, someone tossed the little guy an acorn as payment. Absolutely high on the hype, the creature plotted an encore, deciding to mercilessly mock its clueless owner only to freeze when it spotted the sad loser standing right behind it. Tae-sung-han immediately flamed the furball for having zero shame, calling out how it was literally shaking down fans for snacks. The hamster clapped back, blaming its owner's broke lifestyle. But right as they bickered over how the spirit was supposed to munch on monostones instead of acorns, Manbok Jang rolled up, breathless from hunting him down. Playing it cool, our hero casually mentioned he had a VIP meeting booked inside the castle. The heavyweight gamer complained about still waiting on his loot drop. Siegfried flexed that he was currently on his way to secure the bag, while his buddy bragged that this was his most massive payout ever, throwing shade at their teammate who rage quit early. Even so, Tae-sung-han kept his mouth shut. No way was he ruining the dude's vibe by dropping the bomb that he'd scored the ultimate workshop ticket. Inside, the receptionist's face instantly lit up, totally relieved to see our protagonist walking in one piece. He confessed he only survived thanks to the hero's absolute carry, though he moaned about the guild's wrecked headquarters that would require an astronomical budget to fix. Regardless, Jericho slid over the promised bounty. A whopping 5,000 gold coins. Siegfried snatched up the cash with heavy gratitude, tossing out a quick apology for totally trashing the place. Catching onto the vibe, the receptionist figured the Lord had definitely hooked our boy up with some secret VIP loot and hit him with a wink, swearing to take the secret to his grave, a total bro move. With the tension cleared, Siegfried dropped a heavy question on the NPC, instantly grabbing his attention. The absolute menace of a goblin slayer demanded the exact coordinates for the golden goblin's corpse. Jericho spilled the tea, revealing it was dumped by the Lake of the Blue Moon. The dude explained how the Lord literally impaled the goblin boss on a spike, a brutal flex to terrify any deserters. As Jericho shivered over the gruesome details, our boy had a massive realization. The boomer in charge was way more savage than he originally thought. Bag secured and quest cleared, Siegfried prepared to dip from the territory, looking back on his insane speedrun. He'd leveled up like crazy, making him seriously question if Deus had orchestrated this whole grind. Either way, he had mad respect for his mentor, acknowledging that this starter zone experience was totally cracked. Suddenly, a suffocating aura crashed over the block. A booming voice roared for its student, demanding to know if he was hiding inside, hitting a pitch so piercing it practically shattered Siegfried's eardrums. Wincing from the absolute sonic attack, which left his ears ringing, Siegfried clocked that this insane screaming felt weirdly familiar. He genuinely thought his lunatic master was waiting out front. A massive mob had already swarmed the streets, totally shook by the NPC's terrifying flex. Pushing his way to the front row, Siegfried froze. The boomer standing there? Definitely not Deus. The imposing swordsman locked eyes with our boy and dramatically announced he had finally tracked down his disciple. Completely thrown off, Siegfried asked if the guy was actually talking to him, getting an instant nod. The furball immediately panicked, assuming this absolute unit was Siegfried's hardcore mentor. Our hero denied it, but he couldn't ignore the insane pressure radiating off the dude. Popping his rune of insight, his jaw literally hit the floor. He was staring at the level 361 living legend, Wethagus, the Sword Emperor, and a core member of the Stellar Five. Catching the kid's massive shock, the veteran smirked, soaking in the clout. He proudly introduced himself as the absolute god of the single-edged blade, the man who slices through reality itself. Dropping his name, he flexed his title as the undisputed goat of the Stellar Five, unleashing a tidal wave of suffocating aura. Now, Siegfried knew the deep lore. This squad consisted of 5 god-tier combatants, absolute menaces feared across the entire continent. Every single one was a masterclass threat. Tae-sung-han was completely mind-blown at finding a level 361 gigachad chilling in this trash-tier town. But then again, he remembered stumbling upon his own level 999 cheat code of a master. Deep in the forest, dude was totally banking on this isolated spot to spawn some ridiculously overpowered NPCs. Boom! This random old guy just spawns right in his face, practically giving our hero a heart attack before he could even ask why the geezer was already claiming him as a disciple. The Sword Emperor flexed hard, basically dropping the "because I said so" logic. Wibigas totally read our guy as a clueless noob, completely blind to how the world actually works. So, he launches into this massive ego trip, hyping up his own legendary status and the insane power of the Stellar Five. But our boy just cuts him right off. No lore dump needed here. He casually rattles off exactly how totally busted that entire squad really was, leaving the old master absolutely seething because the kid didn't even flinch. Tae-sung-han drops the polite rejection, casually mentioning he's already taken by another mentor. But catching that drift, the Sword Emperor could not have cared less. He literally tells the kid to just ghost his current master and upgrade to him instead. That blatantly toxic move absolutely triggered our protagonist. Siegfried immediately stepped up, demanding the boomer show some basic respect, boldly stating their teacher could easily wipe the floor with him. This immediately made Weebgos assume they repped the Sovereign Three. Nope. The hero doubles down, swearing his master was on a completely different level, easily dwarfing even those three absolute units who already outranked the fives. Naturally, the Sword Emperor scoffed at the sheer idea of some literal god of destruction running around. Cue the flashback. After grinding non-stop for decades upon decades, this 120-year-old legend finally hit the absolute peak, claiming the master title. But instead of pure hype, just a massive, hollow emptiness. Total radio silence in his soul. He was completely clueless as to why maxing out his ultimate, lifelong dream felt like absolute garbage. Then, the light bulb went off. He casually spotted a veteran blade master nearby, patiently breaking down techniques for his rookie apprentice. Watching that dynamic, the century-plus powerhouse finally had his eureka moment. He desperately needed a prodigy of his own. Weebgos knew he had to pass down his god-tier, flawlessly refined combat arts before his time ran out, making sure his legacy wouldn't just vanish into the dirt. So, he kicked off a massive continent-wide manhunt for the perfect successor. He had plenty of options, sure, but it was a complete circus. Some were walking red flags, while others already looked like they had one foot in the grave. Panic started setting in hard. Forging a rookie took a solid 20 years of hardcore grinding. Factoring in his triple-digit age, the Grim Reaper was literally on his tail. Suddenly, it hit the elder he had completely skipped over the Bierman region. Back in the present, he laid it all out. He had his motives for stepping onto this turf, and the exact second he locked eyes with our boy, it was game over. He instantly knew this kid was the chosen one meant to carry his legacy. But honestly, even after sitting through that whole sob story, the kid hit him with a flat, hard pass. Cornered, the old man dropped his ultimate trap card, proposing a high-stakes challenge right then and there. Realizing that yapping wasn't going to save him, our hero actually got seriously curious. Running from a boss-level threat like this was literally impossible. Plus, the system literally slapped him with a shiny new quest prompt. The bottom line? He had absolute zero choice but to play along. He asked for the rules, and Weebgos kept it brain-dead simple. All the challenger had to do was land a single, solid hit. Seriously. According to the grandpa, claiming victory meant just barely scratching his HP bar. Even a literal paper cut would secure the win. The kid could use absolutely any move in his entire arsenal. To make it fair, the elder promised that given their massive level gap, he'd keep his own mana completely zeroed out. He was planning to tank everything using pure armor. Meanwhile, our boy was internally rolling his eyes at this absolute flex. But then, a light bulb suddenly went off. He remembered that very specific handicap the guy was fighting with absolutely zero magic buffs. Right as Weebgos practically dared him to chicken out, the kid fired back, asking if the boomer even knew his actual name. Of course, the arrogant emperor brushed it off as irrelevant trivia he'd just memorized later. That was the final straw. The kid yanked out his massive mace, calling out the old man's entire bluff. He wasn't looking for a true student. He was just shopping for a shiny new vessel for his legacy. Firing up every single buff in his kit, our hero basically declared he'd rather die than ever bow down to a toxic mentor who treated apprentices like cheap, replaceable tools. Completely unfazed, the veteran just smirked, telling the kid to save all that trash talk for after he actually managed to land a solid hit. Taesung Han was completely locked in, practically vibrating with pure main character energy. Exploding off the ground, he closed the gap in a single heartbeat, loudly predicting his own absolute W. Meanwhile, the Swordmaster confidently analyzed the play. He totally assumed this clueless rookie was obviously planning to spam debuffs on one specific strike zone. But honestly, the Elder figured those cheap parlor tricks were utterly useless against a high-tier raid boss like himself, especially since he could effortlessly read the kid's targeted debuffs like a totally open book. But right as he tried to scan for the weak point, warning bells suddenly went off in his head. The debuffed spot wasn't random, it was already his absolute natural blind spot. Going completely feral, the hero bulldozed right into him, and mid-air, he cranked his heavy mace back and unleashed a devastating, full-power smash that absolutely rocked the old man's health bar. The violent impact ripped through the air, triggering a massive shockwave. Spectators were literally left with ringing ears, completely mind-blown as their brains utterly failed to process the insane glitch in the matrix they had just witnessed. Cut to the big guy on the sidelines. The NPC couldn't stop hyping up our boy's insane combat skills, totally mind-blown over how he completely wiped the floor with the Goblin Lord. And that was despite rocking a seriously trash-tier level. Suddenly, Jericho spotted something chilling, forcing everyone to look at a Stellar 5 heavyweight who had literally died, frozen dead on his feet. Seeing this, our absolute unit of a hero got his answer, putting together that even the most hyped grandmasters still had a massive weak spot when it came to their internal organs. Brushing off the flex, he He casually noted that this brutal takedown would serve as a permanent wake-up call against pulling off dumb stunts like this ever again. When the loot drop was brought up, reality hit the apprentice he had actually clutched the win. Honestly though, Taesung-han just prayed his grand prize was permanently ghosting this annoying geezer. Shaking off the dust, his tiny furball companion squeaked out, asking what the heck just went down. Our guy immediately checked on his little buddy, who complained about a massive migraine from the old man's cheap shot, a wine that actually gave his owner a huge wave of relief. Knowing they pushed their luck, the warrior whispered that they needed to dip before the psycho swordsman snapped back to consciousness. But wait, he totally forgot his original side quest before this whole crazy showdown happened. So Ham Ham chimed in to remind him about the golden goblin. Our hustler instantly remembered he needed to harvest the creature's blood before it completely spoiled, aiming to secure a massive bag at the market. Wasting zero time, the duo hit the road. Flashing back 30 years, a monstrous level, 500 python once spawned in the McKellen Kingdom's Sahoka, ruins a legendary grinding spot for adventurers, sitting anywhere between level 40 and 60. Right next door stood a massive guild hub, completely packed with gamers spamming the chat for new squadmates. Meanwhile, the high-tier veterans were busy selling carry runs for cold hard cash. Hidden in this chaotic crowd was a super stressed, brunette player desperately hunting for a reliable party member. Out of nowhere, some random dude slid up to her, eyeing her request, pitching himself as a DPS carry because he was itching to flex his brand new gear. Total rejection hit him like a truck when she straight up stated she only needed support classes, sending the guy stomping away in absolute salt. Literally every single party was begging for a support build. Gozran, a level 48 elemental mage, couldn't believe there wasn't a single healer or buff caster chilling in this massive mob of players. It clicked in her brain instantly. The entire server was thirsty for utility players, and they had been camping this spot for hours. Just as she was ready to rage quit, something wild caught her eye. A totally fresh player had just walked into the ruins, radiating total noob energy. Curiosity taking over, she popped a rune of insight to vibe check his raw stats, and what she saw left her absolutely speechless. Gosran immediately blocked our boy's path, confusing the heck out of both him and his pet, while a glowing, majestic aura practically screamed support class around him. Blushing furiously, she shyly asked if he would be down to join her squad. Cutting to reality, we catch our main guy wiring a massive payment, right after clutching his previous mission. He needed to handle some toxic real-world baggage, specifically the insane debts left behind by his deadbeat dad, hitting a staggering $225,000. Paying it off made him suddenly realize the local loan sharks hadn't showed up to harass him lately. Deciding not to look a gift horse in the mouth, he happily strutted down the street to grab some grub, praying those goons were out of his life for good. But then, a crazy expensive sports car parked nearby caught his attention, featuring a rich dude chilling with his girl. Our guy stood there calculating how many millions that ride cost, comparing it to the decent bag he just secured from his latest boss fight. Honestly though, running into the Golden Goblin was pure luck. Low-tier gamers almost never stumbled upon quests dropping that kind of premium loot. You see, the whole economy inside Brave New World mirrored real-life Wall Street levels of complexity. Players over level 200 hoarded all the insanely lucrative missions, literally charging newbies a premium just to piggyback off their high-tier runs. If you were cracked enough at the game, you could straight up turn it into a full-time esports career. Plus, the top-tier players with the right charisma were pulling massive audiences, launching insanely successful streaming channels, which meant that if our boy just grinded his way to the top, he would actually secure a permanent, wealthy lifestyle. Right now, his VR capsule was literally his only asset, yet Taesung-han couldn't stop visualizing a future where he is whipping a hypercar and chilling in a massive sky-high penthouse. Oh, and finding a breathtaking girlfriend to share that luxury with was definitely on his vision board. Snap back to the game, his squeaking pet suddenly dragged him out of his daydreams. Totally zoning out, Siegfried awkwardly asked Gosran to repeat herself. Hearing that she was desperately hunting for a buffer, our clueless hero finally connected the dots. She had definitely scanned him with a rune of insight. She mistook his glowing aura for a support class, leaving him completely humiliated since he initially thought she was just heavily flirting with him. Right when he opened his mouth to reject the invite, Ham Ham aggressively hit accept for him. Siegfried lost his mind, yelling at the tiny furball, but the rodent completely ignored him, basically calling his master blind for not realizing this girl was totally crushing on him. While they bickered like an old married couple, Gosran watched the cute interaction in awe, forcing our guy to bite his tongue and just roll with his pet's crazy decision. Knowing he couldn't hide his true power forever, he pitched a simple idea, hanging in the backline and spamming debuffs. Gosran didn't even blink, totally cool with the setup. They already had plenty of heavy hitters for the vanguard, anyway. Flashing him the ultimate puppy dog eyes, she practically begged him to join their squad. Off to the side, his pet hamster flashed a devious little grin, clearly enjoying its master being completely caught off guard. Shrugging off the shock, our guy caved and locked in with the elemental mage. Fast forward to later that afternoon, deep in the western sector of the ruins, he started piecing together the lore of this wasteland. This desolate zone used to be a thriving metropolis before Python, the lightning serpent, wiped it off the map 30 years ago. Even though that colossal beast was long dead, its residual energy had completely corrupted the soil. This cursed earth basically turned the area into a massive breeding ground for light-based creatures. Putting the pieces together, the hero finally clicked. Exactly why every single mob roaming around packed holy damage. Meanwhile, a random party member pulled the mage aside, clearly throwing shade at our boy. The dude was super skeptical, convinced the hero was dead weight, just because his level was sitting at rock bottom. She shut that negativity down instantly. To her, levels didn't mean a thing since he was strictly on backline duty while they tanked the aggro. Plus, she promised to step in and save his skin if things got too dicey. Rolling his eyes, the skeptical guy seriously questioned if her bleeding heart was making her dangerously clueless. He flat out complained that dragging a squishy debuffer along was a total waste of a party slot. Gosran clapped back, reminding him that the meta support classes were completely booked up, so they just had to grind through it with what they had. Out of nowhere, her instinct screamed danger. Without thinking, she yanked her teammate's head down, barely dodging a lethal blast of energy. Siegfried's eyes went wide as he locked onto the source. They were staring down a horde of creatures mutated by the dead serpent's toxic aura, the infamous laserlings. These level 35 spirits were notoriously annoying because they never fought alone, always swarming in massive waves. Stepping up, the party leader barked out orders to lock in. She called the shots, putting herself and the swordsman right in the middle of the chaos, while their tank took the front line to absorb the brunt of the assault. Glancing back at our hero, she told him to stay out of the crossfire and just cast his magic. And just like that, the glowing lizards lunged forward, teeth bared. Absolute chaos erupted as steel clashed against raw magic. The swordsman swung his blade with reckless momentum, unleashing a devastating strike, but his teammate screamed at him to dodge instead of face-tanking the hits. Brushing her off, the arrogant dude flexed that he barely felt a scratch, ignoring the stark reality that their squad lacked a dedicated healer, or a buffer to carry them through. He kept trash-talking, claiming that throwing debuffs at low-tier mobs was utterly pointless, clearly salty that our guy was basically getting a free ride for the loot drop. But right in the middle of his arrogant rant about hunting bigger prey, glowing targeting marks completely painted his body. He froze, utterly dumbfounded, watching the deadly barrage hurtle toward him. Before anyone could even blink, a brutal crossfire of lasers blasted him from every possible angle. He took massive critical hits, collapsing to the dirt in an instant. His teammate gasped in pure horror, realizing they were absolutely boxed in by an endless sea of laserlings. Panic setting in, she screamed that they were heavily outnumbered, and though Gosran ordered an immediate fallback, they were trapped with zero escape routes. Cornered and desperate, the mage mentally kicked herself for underestimating the dungeon's insane spawn rate. Making a massive sacrifice, she pulled out 3 ultra-rare teleport scrolls, ready to hand them over and hold the line so the others could survive. But flipping the script, the support casually strolled straight to the front line, completely rejecting her exit strategy. Gosran stood there stunned, realizing he had totally read her mind, calling her out for trying to play the tragic hero instead of using the pricey item to save her own life. He hit her with the cold, hard truth. He knew exactly the kind of bleeding heart she was, and warned her that being too selfless in this ruthless world would just make her an easy target for manipulators. He practically ordered her to pop the scroll and bail, leaving her completely torn and stressed over his survival. Flashing a confident smirk, Han Taesung dropped the ultimate bombshell. Running away was pointless, because this whole situation was basically a joke to him. Before anyone could process his flex, jaws hit the floor. He instantly triggered his zone of mortality and zone of frailty, washing the entire battlefield in a terrifying, dark aura. With his ultimate debuffs locked in, our boy casually announced that these overpowered lizards were now nothing but sitting ducks waiting to be farmed. Fired up by his insane carry, the remaining squad members launched a brutal counterattack. Pure hype surged through one of the surviving fighters as he dashed furiously into the fray, slicing through the mutated lizards like a hot knife through butter. He was absolutely hyped to see these once tanky beasts getting practically one-shotted. But cutting through the excitement, the hero sharply reminded them not to get cocky, pointing out that the mobs still packed their original attack damage, so one sloppy move could still send them straight to the grave. Siegfried was absolutely shook by how completely effortless this whole grind felt, literally soaking up experience points. Just by spamming a few nasty hexes, leaving him totally convinced he was born to play a dedicated debuff main. But right then, a party member screamed, a warning about a blindside strike, and the elemental mage swooped in at the literal last second to tank the hit for our boy, instantly making sure he was safe while he poured out his massive thanks for that clutch rescue. Then, flashing back to how insanely fast she had reacted to protect the rest of the squad, he clocked that her god-tier reflexes completely belonged to high-mobility classes like rangers or assassins, which honestly made him realize she was seriously nerfing her own insane potential by hard-locking an elemental mage build. Flash forward a bit, and a massive level-up notification popped off, leaving the whole crew absolutely speechless, considering every single player had bumped up at least one rank, pushing it to the point where any spectator would swear they were using aimbots. Breaking the silence, someone jokingly asked the squad how they liked being heavily carried. Flexing a bit, Siegfried mentioned how insanely satisfying it felt to watch them hype up the exact same skills they were hard doubting just minutes ago. Of course, the main dude who originally trash-talked his utility totally flipped the script, swearing he trusted the process from day one, while the girl straight up admitted he was leagues above any basic healer they had ever partied with. It suddenly clicked for Tai Sung Han why debuff mains got so arrogant with their power dynamic, watching this former hater aggressively backpedal just to glaze him up. The mage then dropped a bombshell, confessing she had literally never crossed paths with a pure hex build, which low-key panicked our protagonist. The second she asked if he was rocking a secret class. Dodging the bullet, he completely capped, arguing that if he had a secret build, he would have already signed with a top-tier guild to let them violently power level him. Still, when interrogated about his exact tier, he played it off as a super niche variant strictly built to ruin enemy stats. Hearing this, the warrior immediately assumed it was a fresh update, stealth dropped by the game devs. Even though the meta strictly locked classes into 4 main tiers, the exact details stayed entirely hidden whenever someone swapped their secondary job. So, Tae Sung Han promised himself to stay paranoid, deeply regretting that flexing his raw power basically painted a giant target on his secret class. Right as he stressed over this, the elemental mage slid up to him, instantly tossing all their hard-earned loot his way. These drops were low-tier crystallized lights, the glowing leftovers of the dead python's aura. He instantly pushed back, saying the massive payout was way too overkill, but she shut him down, explaining that feeding the best drops to the support was basic etiquette, genuinely thanking him for turning the boss raid into a complete cakewalk. Caught off guard by the vibe, he finally pocketed the loot, only for the elemental mage to suddenly reach out and gently grab his hand. Hitting him with the absolute purest puppy dog eyes, she softly asked if he would consider sticking around as their permanent party member. Trying to play it cool, he agreed to stick around, claiming that grinding through the matchmaking system for every single dungeon was just too annoying. The entire squad erupted in pure hype, thrilled that this god-tier hexer was officially locked into their roster. Mentally, Siegfried celebrated finally getting a taste of a regular, non-toxic gamer lifestyle, though his savage hamster familiar instantly roasted him for only saying yes because a cute girl asked. Fast forward exactly 7 days into his new party life, and the squad had just wrapped up their daily grind outside the Sohoka Intervention Inn. While they had not stumbled into any insane Golden Goblin-level hidden quests, our boy was still racking up constant micro-wins, specifically hoarding crazy new utility spells for his hotbar. Breaking the silence, his furball companion asked if they were hitting their usual weird routine right before logging off. He locked it in, swearing he needed to violently abuse his abilities to max potential, starting by piling up all the raw crystals he looted from their latest dungeon sweep, before activating his broken new perk, Absorb Attributes, which literally let him eat the elemental rocks. Crunching down, he permanent buffed his stats with 0.36 light resistance, alongside a sweet 0.36 boost to his light energy reserves. Basically, this insane Absorb Attributes trick, dropping exactly at level 35, turned him into a literal vacuum for elemental stats, hardcore boosting his elemental shields, and promising to unlock god-tier new moves once he consumed a high enough quota. Best of all, this exact mechanic let him channel that raw elemental juice to perfectly min-max his existing loadout. The only massive catch was the zero information progression bar. He had zero clue how many glowing rocks he had to eat before his next massive power spike. On top of that, Siegfried was secretly plotting his grand exit from the squad, knowing he would unlock the busted Flying Spur ability the second he dinged level 45. His master plan was to drop the bomb on his teammates and log out of the group tomorrow, once he hit that exact milestone. But literally mid-thought, a core memory hit him, the incredibly soft, desperate voice the cute elemental mage used when she begged him to stick around. His whole face burned cherry red, totally throwing him off his game and forcing him to put off the hard choice until morning. Fast forward to a fresh sunrise inside the VR MMO server. Tai Sung-han cracked open the tavern doors, dropping a quick, "my bad for oversleeping," only to immediately freeze as he realized the entire lobby was swarming with high-level players. Whispering, he interrogated his pet about any crazy patch notes dropping while they were away from keyboard, but the hamster was completely out of the loop too. Without warning, a random tryhard in the crowd pointed him out as the legendary debuff master. Instantly, the entire mob aggressively stampeded his way, desperately throwing party invites and begging him to carry their raids. In exactly 3 seconds flat, our boy was violently drowning in a chaotic sea of spam requests. But right when things looked bleak, a hand snatched his. It was the elemental mage, channeling raw wind magic, to carve a path straight through the massive mob. Before our hero could even process what was happening, she whipped out 2 return scrolls. In a flash of blinding light, the debuff master and the spellcaster vanished from the chaos, dropping seamlessly into a brand new zone. Gazrin groaned, admitting that warping always flipped her stomach upside down. Meanwhile, our boy instantly recognized their surroundings as the exact spot where they pulled off their very first trade. The mage breathed a heavy sigh of relief, thanking her lucky stars she had anchored a warp point here, never actually thinking she would need to use it as an emergency getaway. Siegfried wasn't having it though, and demanded to know why they were running. In response, she silently pulled up a viral clip showcasing him flexing his insane nerfing abilities. She dropped the absolute bomb. Literally every single player in Brave New World had already watched this footage. Before she could even name-drop the snitch, the puzzle pieces clicked for our protagonist. It had to be Itz, since he was conveniently missing from the entire recording. Gazrin confirmed his theory, revealing the guy ditched their squad, and absolutely leaked the footage online the second he felt he was a safe distance away from their wrath. She swore up and down that she was totally clueless about his snake-like behavior. Siegfried sighed, admitting he was way too familiar with these two-faced players who act friendly right before plunging a knife into your back. This brutal betrayal hit way too close to home, flashing him back to his toxic former guildmate. Feeling awful, Gazrin desperately apologized for dragging him into their mess, but our hero immediately shut that down, assuring her she did absolutely nothing wrong. Shifting the mood, he thanked her for pulling him out of that insane mob. When she pressed him on his next move, he kept it strictly business, stating he needed to grind fast and hit level 45 before dipping out. Gazrin visibly hesitated, nervously hyping herself up, before pitching a crazy idea to the guy. Cheeks totally flushed, she finally dropped the question. Would he be down to duo with just her? Gesturing around, she highlighted how the area was completely wiped clean of monsters, compared to their first visit, hyping up their squad's insane clearing pace, all thanks to his god-tier support abilities. Our guy was internally sweating. Running a strict duo with her was never on his bingo card, and his brain screamed at him to instantly reject the offer. But one look at her radiant, angelic smile, and his defenses completely crumbled. Right on cue, the hamster chimed in, echoing its earlier prediction, and leaving our hero completely stunned as it smugly declared that the mage was totally crushing on him. Tae Sung-han flared up, instantly triggered by the rodent's massive ego, prompting the furball to roast its master for being utterly clueless about women. Shifting gears, Heyman dropped a bombshell, revealing he was inches away from unlocking his very first skill. The creature bragged that his own evolution was tied directly to his master's leveling up. But before Siegfried could pull up his stats to check, the tension spiked. The elemental mage leaned in way too close, eyes sparkling as she hyped up the moment, totally amazed that only top-tier pets ever unlocked real abilities. Offended, the creature instantly fired back at Miss Crush, loudly declaring he was a majestic forest spirit bound by an equal contract, firmly crossing the line that he was definitely nobody's pet. Flustered, Gazrin scrambled to apologize, explaining she totally misread the vibe, since he literally called the guy Master. The furball grumbled that her dazzling beauty basically forced the title out of his mouth. Taking back the reins, our hero finally asked the burning question. Why was she going out of her way to be this nice to him? He figured it was just to exploit his broken debuff masterclass, but she smoothly countered that there was way more to the story. Tae Sung-han literally short-circuited when she casually mentioned his good looks were definitely a massive part of the package. But before he could completely freak out, she busted out laughing, admitting she was just messing with him. While the hamster grabbed mental popcorn for the drama, Gazrin got real, confessing that while his rare class hooked her initially, another reason made her want him to stick around. Hooked on her words, he listened as she admitted he was a total enigma to her. She wasn't just obsessed with his in-game stats, she actually wanted to figure out the real guy behind the avatar. Flustered beyond belief, he tried to brush it off, claiming he was just another average gamer. But she wasn't buying it, insisting his selfless actions during their brief team-up proved he had a heart of gold. To her, this powerhouse support was so much more than just a helping the party with his abilities while also double-checking their formation, their equipment, and even their item count. Speaking of potions, the elemental mage gushed that she had never met a more thoughtful support player. But truth be told, these were just old instincts kicking in from his time as a guildmaster. Hearing this, the mage admitted that those qualities were making her super curious about the real Siegfried behind the avatar. But our hero insisted he was a total nobody outside the game, when suddenly, the ground fractured beneath them, and the trio found themselves plummeting into a chasm. They were completely blindsided, buried alive in an instant without any clue what was happening. A system notification flashed before his eyes. He was out cold and would reboot in 5 seconds. Startled, Tae Sung-han snapped back to reality, realizing he'd just been knocked unconscious. He started piecing together why the ground would just split open like that. When someone rushed in to check on him, it was his party member, Gazrin, and his spirit animal. Right away, he spotted the nasty gash on the elemental mage's shoulder. She totally tried to brush it off, explaining she got hurt shielding him from the cascade of falling rocks. He immediately apologized for dragging her into such a messed up situation, but she insisted she was fine, promising she'd heal up in no time thanks to a potion she chugged. With that settled, the mage then asked our protagonist if he'd noticed anything else that felt off. As the adventurers crept into the Osric cult's research center hidden under the ruins, Tae Sung-han confessed he'd never even heard of this cult. Gazrin admitted she was just as clueless, but pointed out that the entire place gave off some seriously sketchy vibes. She began to speculate that the recent explosion of monsters in the region had to be coming from this very location, especially considering it was littered with the corpses of dead laserlings, and that this kind of dungeon had no business existing in this area. It finally clicked for both of them. They had stumbled into a hidden dungeon. These secret zones held unique quests and special bosses, just like that golden goblin they fought earlier. The girl was instantly weirded out when she saw our hero's eyes literally start to sparkle, as he daydreamed about the insane rewards waiting for them. And while Gazrin voiced her skepticism about the two of them clearing a high-difficulty secret dungeon all by themselves, Siegfried detected movement. A wounded man stumbled into the chamber before crashing to the stone floor. They shared a look. Not a word was needed to know exactly what to do next. A moment later, the injured stranger was chugging a health potion and stammering his thanks to his rescuers, who immediately pressed him for answers about his injuries. The man revealed he was with a covert organization called the Guardians, and his squad was deployed based on intel about an Osric cult hideout, but he was forced into a desperate retreat, realizing the cultists they encountered down here were on a completely different level than they'd anticipated, and he started begging the adventurers to finish his mission and stop the cult. The second he realized this was a hidden quest, our protagonist was all in, asking for the objective. The guard laid it out. They had to obliterate the 5 orbs scattered throughout the research facility to stop the resurrection of some catastrophic entity. Just then, the guard's pursuers spotted him and charged in for the kill. Recognizing them as cult members, our hero declared he would handle the attackers while his partner shielded the injured guard, but the mage shot back that he'd be slaughtered if he only planned on using his debuff abilities, so the young man admitted he owed her big time for saving both him and his pet. Then he made her promise him one thing: no matter what happens next, she could not record any of it. In that same moment, the assassins closed in on the protagonist. He braced himself, gathering his power, before one-shotting every last one of them in a single, devastating blast. Siegfried then stated that as long as she keeps her camera off, conquering this dungeon would be a sure thing. Meanwhile, a henchman had been slammed into the wall, and you could tell from his gear that he was another adventurer. But the protagonist affirmed he was only after the lab's location, promising he wouldn't kill the fanatic if he just coughed up the information. But the cultist spat back that true believers have no fear of death. The man then snarled that our hero would face divine retribution for daring to steal from their sacred laboratory. At that, Siegfried declared he was done playing nice. A flicker of fear crossed the man's face as he stammered that torture wouldn't break him. But our protagonist just smirked. He explained he was just looking to get a little exercise, complaining that he was getting stiff after a whole week without a good fight. Then, Tae Sung-han's voice dropped to a menacing whisper, saying he was very eager to see just how deep the man's loyalty to the cult really ran. Dude was itching to crack some skulls, so the goon immediately folded and spilled the exact coordinates to the laboratory. This earned him a swift knock to the head from his buddy for being a coward, but just like that, the lab's location was locked in. He then caught the intrigued expression on the lady's face, realizing she was catching on to the fact he was concealing his true power level. So, he told her to just hang tight until after the quest, promising to reveal everything. Gosran, intrigued, agreed to be patient. As they departed, a member of the Guardians shot them a suspicious glare. At that very moment, inside a demolished lab, where the bodies of cult members were strewn about, the survivors were cleaning up the secret facility buried beneath the rubble. One of them grimly announced that the document in his hand was now completely useless, prompting the High Priest Romulus to chew out a captured guardian for trashing the lab when they were on the verge of a breakthrough. But the man defiantly shot back, declaring that their sole purpose was to shield the world and they would forever stand against evil schemes. Yet, in the middle of his heroic monologue, his chest was ripped open by the High Priest's blade. Romulus coolly ordered his minions to dispose of the body. He then inquired about the guardian who had managed to escape. A subordinate reported that a large party was hunting him and his wounds meant he couldn't have gotten far. The High Priest began to openly mock the guardians, sneering at how they gave it their all and still failed to derail his master plan. The madman was ecstatic, picturing his defeated enemies watching helplessly from the afterlife as he resurrected the great demon. In that instant, a massive fire spell shot out from the darkness, slamming directly into the giant egg. Seeing this, the High Priest's eyes went wide with disbelief. The psycho couldn't process that what he was witnessing was actually happening. Siegfried casually praised the elemental mage for her pinpoint accuracy, but the priest just assumed he was facing another squad of guardians. The hero, however, confirmed with a smirk that this wasn't the case at all. That's when Romulus realized the chilling silence from outside meant all his guards had been taken out. In a panic, the High Priest ordered his scientists to immediately initiate the resurrection ritual. A switch was thrown, and the ceremony roared to life. Immense waves of energy pulsed through the chamber. The quest objective appeared: destroy all 5 orbs in under 5 minutes to stop the great monster's return. Siegfried declared he'd handle the goons and told his partner to focus on wrecking the orbs. This made Ghostran worried for his safety, but he brushed it off, assuring her he'd be fine since there were hardly any enemies left. Our protagonist took a moment to size up the High Priest, thinking he might actually pose a threat. He then charged forward, yelling for the girl to hustle and finish the quest. In response, Romulus commanded his followers to execute the hero on the spot. In a blur, 2 of them closed the distance, their weapons poised to strike our protagonist down. But the debuff master moved fluidly, blocking the first one's halberd, while simultaneously dodging the second one's sword. Our protagonist then slammed a brutal elbow into the first henchman's face, before pivoting his mace towards the second, sending him flying with a single, devastating hit. Suddenly, he sensed goon number 1 behind him, ready to land a cheap shot, and so, he spun around instantly, using his mace to parry the weapon. But in that exact moment, a sinister green magic flared to life out of thin air, completely startling our hero. When the spell connected, it triggered a massive explosion, and just like that, the henchman was vaporized, prompting the debuff master to call out the boss for firing off a wide-range attack, while his own guy was in the blast zone. Romulus found this hilarious, given how our protagonist had literally just used the man as a human meat shield. Despite this, the High Priest had to admit that Siegfried was an incredibly skilled and powerful warrior, one he couldn't possibly face alone. This led our hero to think the guy was about to give up, seeing as how all of his backup had been wiped out. But then, a twisted smile spread across the man's face. He declared that he still had plenty of allies, just as a ghostly green specter phased into existence and lunged for our hero's neck, forcing him to strike it down. Siegfried recognized these entities as wraiths, and Romulus confirmed he was not just a high priest, but a dark priest. He was a warlock who drew power from the souls of the dead, meaning that as long as he was surrounded by corpses, he was essentially invincible. That said, the level 55 necromancer who commanded the dead was getting hyped to add the protagonist's soul to his unholy collection. The souls immediately swarmed our protagonist, who tried to create some distance, when suddenly, he spun around and swung at them with his mace, but it had zero effect. The spirits of the dead simply phased right through him. Taesung Han could feel his health bar draining every time one of the ghosts passed through him, realizing they were some form of summoned entity. It hit him that if he didn't do something, he was toast. These creatures were immune to his physical attacks, and he had to think fast because they were still on a timer. But that's when it clicked for Siegfried. The high priest wasn't trying to beat him, he was trying to stall him until the timer hit 0. The summoner erupts in laughter, mocking that the hero's attacks were completely useless against his wraiths. Unfazed, our hero blasts forward and unleashes his skill. Heavy Strike, declaring he doesn't need to fight the minions, only their master. And just like that, Romulus is sent smashing into the wall. Taesun Han then sneers, sarcastically praising him for the parry, just as his mace shatters the sword and slams to a halt inches from his face. Utterly enraged, the high priest unleashes his entire spectral army, focusing all their power on our hero in a final, desperate attempt to crush him. But just as the cultist gloats that his struggle is futile, and the Great Calamity's rebirth is inevitable, our debuff master gets a level up notification, unlocking the Flying Spur skill, which lets him redirect a thrown weapon mid-flight, straight towards any target he chooses. And from beneath the swarm of spirits, A brilliant blue arrow of light surges upward. The summoner is left completely baffled as our protagonist vows to deliver the divine punishment that he so richly deserves. With that, the weapon plummets down on Romulus, forcing him to choke on his own blood and inflicting an insane amount of damage. This new skill is so ridiculously powerful, it detonates in a massive explosion as it slams into the villain. With the High Priest now officially out of the fight, the blood-soaked mace begins to hover in the air. Its wielder can't help but marvel at how incredibly easy it is to control, immediately regretting not unlocking this skill way earlier. Now, with that threat neutralized, only one major problem was left: destroying the orbs. A moment later, a searing blast of fire finds its mark. With that orb shattered, the elemental mage had now wrecked a total of 3. But as she silently prayed for her injured shoulder to hold out until the mission was over, a group of cultists suddenly ambushes her. To immobilize her, they grab her viciously by that exact same injured shoulder. The girl is now in a seriously tight spot, with less than 90 seconds left on the clock. But then, the flying mace screams in out of nowhere, instantly obliterating the 4th orb, leaving the henchmen completely shocked. That's when Siegfried takes them both out with a single, clean strike each. Gazrin gasps in relief at the sight of Tai Sun Han, admitting she's struggling because of her wounded shoulder, and apologizing for holding him back. But our hero insists she has nothing to feel guilty about, before telling her that she's the only one who can actually finish the quest. She's shocked, pointing out that he has a flying mace. But Siegfried explains, his skill has a long cooldown, and the 5th orb is immune to physical damage. Only magic can destroy it. The girl is filled with doubt, but he instantly snaps her out of her spiraling thoughts. We don't have the luxury of time to hesitate, the hero states firmly. And so, Gazrin steels herself for the attack, warning, "Don't blame me if this doesn't hit the target." Only 15 seconds remain. The elemental mage struggles to aim her spell, the pain from her shoulder making it almost impossible. Just then, a hand gently covers her own. Our protagonist is steadying her arm, helping her aim. The shocked girl's eyes meet the debuff master's. A surge of confidence flows through her as she unleashes a torrent of fire. 1 second left on the timer. The attack is just about to connect with the orb when the High Priest hurls himself directly into its path, using his own body to shield the final orb. Both of them are completely stunned by what they just witnessed. In his final moments, Romulus begs the creature to unleash its disaster upon the entire world. And just like that, with the clock hitting 0, the duo had failed to destroy all the orbs. Its arrival was no longer a possibility. It was an inevitability. As if on cue, the massive egg begins to crack, blinding light erupting from within. Seeing this, our hero is slammed with regret for not finishing off the High Priest when he had the chance. But then, his attention is ripped away, as he realizes they are now standing before a gargantuan white serpent. And with its appearance, a new alert pops up for the pair, a hidden quest. Their objective: take down the reincarnated python, the lightning serpent. The monster was colossal, crackling with pure light energy. Its sheer presence and bone-shaking roar were enough to completely overwhelm them. It was in that moment Siegfried finally understood just how insane these cultists truly were to have reincarnated the legendary lightning serpent of disaster. But then he notices something. It isn't as massive as he expected. According to the ancient myths, the python was supposed to be the size of a mountain. This thing, while undeniably huge, was definitely much smaller than the legends claimed. This creature of an unknown species was the very same great serpent that had annihilated the city of Sohoka 30 years prior. But it wasn't level 500 like the original beast. It was only level 70. The elemental mage quickly pieced it together. Because they destroyed 4 of the orbs, it wasn't able to reincarnate with its full strength. Even so, the power radiating from it was absolutely terrifying. This meant they had to run. The hero, on the other hand, was practically buzzing with excitement, claiming this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and even promised to hook her up with some of the loot if she dipped. But, to his absolute shock, she just started slamming a potion. She then tossed him a bottle of the exact same low-tier light resistance potion, admitting it was the best she could offer. Her move totally caught the hero off guard. The elemental mage then laid it out. They needed to face this thing, just like he suggested, because an opportunity like this was one of a kind. Then the girl went all in, promising to protect him, and declaring they had to see this battle through to the very end. Left with no choice, the protagonist agreed, but he laid down the law. If that colossal serpent ended up killing her, it was not on him. The moment the words left his mouth, the giant reptile lunged straight for our hero, who dodged at the last possible second while still chugging his potion. The young man then spun around, his resistance to light now jacked up, and yelled at his partner to watch out for the massive, lightning-fast beast. On his command, the colossal monster switched targets and tried to slam the protagonist all over again, but he slipped away once more. He then leaped from the top of a pillar, instantly seizing the high ground. The debuff master figured it was time to test the monster's true power, dropping it right into his zone of mortality, a skill designed to shred its defenses. Siegfried then channeled his heavy strike skill into his mace and hammered the giant reptile with 3 crushing blows in a row. But the monster's counterattack was swift. It whipped its massive tail around and nearly obliterated our hero, who escaped by launching himself into the air with milliseconds to spare. But mid-air, he froze, because the system flashed a terrifying warning. The Great Calamity was charging up its ultimate breath attack, and he was caught directly in the line of fire. The elemental mage had to make a move. She blasted the monster's jaw with a fire spell right as it unleashed that devastating beam, causing the massive reptile to misfire and miss our hero by a single hair. Just like that, the protagonist was saved from total annihilation by the white serpent's overwhelming power. As he crashed to the ground, his partner rushed over to him. Tae-Sung-han quickly explained he dodged the skill itself, he just smacked his head during the fall, which only made the girl worry about him even more. Staring at the insane trail of destruction, the protagonist had a grim realization. Even in its incomplete form, this thing was a hidden boss with ridiculous offensive power. The protagonist quickly calculated that they had to kill this python before its breath attack reset. Another blast like that one would bring the entire building down on their heads. But the giant reptile wasn't about to make things easy for them. It threw up an electric barrier around itself, a skill that cranked its resistance up by 200, and would paralyze anyone who dared to touch it. Watching this monster pour all its mana into these insane attacks, only to hide inside a shield to recharge, the hero couldn't help but call it out for being a coward, especially for its size. His partner then asked him what the plan was. Magic was useless, and getting close was a death sentence, but Siegfried confirmed there was a way. And with that, he unleashed his Zone of Frailty, a debuff targeting both endurance and mana, announcing that it was time for his nerfing abilities to take center stage. The second it was caught in the nerfing domain, the python was on high alert. The intense agony inflicted by the Zone of Frailty sent it into a berserker rage, shattering its own shield in the process. But the debuff master already knew that even with its boosted defense, the fixed damage from his skill meant it was still going to feel every bit of pain. Siegfried also clocked that because it had to forcibly cancel the electric shield, the monster hadn't recovered enough mana. Seeing its health bar practically empty, the protagonist knew victory was within reach and charged forward, stunning his partner. Now, totally unhinged, the beast unleashed its light powers, calling down a storm of lightning across the battlefield. But Siegfried expertly weaved through every single ground-shattering strike before launching himself skyward and slamming his mace into the monster with everything he had. That's when Tae-Sung-han noticed it. The monster was trying to nail him from behind with a sneaky tail attack, giving him no other option but to activate his speed regulation, a skill that tanks every single one of the monster's stats. With the python now slowed to a crawl, the hero declared that he wasn't falling for the same trick twice. Then, he activated Supreme Contempt, a skill that let him deal even more devastating damage to higher-level enemies. And with that, the final blow landed. The protagonist had successfully taken down the reincarnation of the Great Calamity, with his bare hands, finally clearing the main quest. With the python defeated, the young warrior had stopped the Azrak cult's evil scheme, which boosted him to level 46 and gave him a few rewards that, honestly, were kind of a letdown. He was really hoping to jump at least 2 levels, meaning the grind to level 200 was going to take forever. He was already fantasizing about the epic quest rewards when the girl suddenly appeared beside him, but the elemental mage's expression was one of pure shock. She couldn't believe he had actually managed to win, so he tried to give her the credit, saying he never could have pulled it off without her help. Though deep down, the sorceress knew that was a total lie. The kid was more than capable of soloing the entire quest by himself. Still, she had to admit, her level 45 ally was a certified freak of nature, because even after she'd weakened the monster, it should have taken a whole party of level 70s to kill that python. Her thoughts were shattered when the hero's voice cut in. Ghost Ren sheepishly admitted she'd completely spaced out and said they needed to check out the loot, but the boy had other plans. He declared they had to deal with a far more urgent matter first, which immediately sent the lady's mind racing. She figured he was hiding yet another overpowered ability. But to her complete astonishment, the protagonist just asked for a pair of rubber gloves. An exasperated Siegfried had to explain that they needed to carve up the monster's corpse to harvest the materials, which made Ghost Ren realize that was the urgent matter. With that settled, the two got to work, stripping the python for parts. They collected its blood, scales, flesh, and bones, even yanking out its fangs, prompting the elemental mage to gush about how awesome giant bosses were for dropping so much loot. But she immediately noticed her ally didn't share her excitement when he started complaining, leaving Siegfried completely underwhelmed by the basic tier rewards from a hidden dungeon boss. Only a single item managed to grab his attention. It was the monster's core, a consumable item overflowing with an insane amount of light energy. Realizing only one of them could claim it, he looked the elemental mage straight in the eye and laid down the facts, stating that he had contributed the most to bringing the python down. She was completely captivated. When he then announced he would only take a single piece of the reward, making his offer, he would give her every single piece of treasure if she would let him keep just the monster's core, which he tried to pass off as worthless. After a painfully awkward moment of silence, the spellcaster started giggling, which totally creeped out our hero. He demanded to know what was so funny, and she just told him he was becoming more and more fascinating. Then, to his utter disbelief, she told him to keep all the loot for himself, reminding him of their very first mission together. Back then, they gave him everything, because their only objective was to farm experience points, and she said this was exactly the same deal. The lady explained that the massive XP boost she gained from this insane adventure was the only reward she truly cared about. She swore she would treasure this memory for the rest of her days. The hero was stunned by the offer, but decided to accept it. I mean, who wouldn't be okay with taking all that loot? The only snag was the sheer volume of treasure. It was way too much for his inventory. Just as he was considering sharing it with his party member after all, Ham Ham popped into existence, proclaiming that this was his moment to shine. His master immediately assumed the little pet wanted to hoard all the loot. This only made him look like a bigger idiot to the spirit, who insisted that wasn't his plan at all. After putting its tiny hands together, the hamster summoned a small piece of cloth while Siegfried watched, completely unimpressed. The great spirit then proudly announced his new skill. It was called Infinity Bundle. A second later, the hamster was unceremoniously snatched up by his master, who called the new skill disgusting. But then, the protagonist noticed something incredible. Peering into the piece of cloth, he saw a swirling galaxy, a literal starry night sky. This was the power of Ham Ham's Infinity Bundle, a fabric woven from the elemental world of nothingness, granting it limitless storage capacity. Seeing this, Siegfried's mind was blown. The Infinity Bundle was the ultimate cheat code for the one problem that plagued every single player: limited inventory space. Our hero immediately began showering Ham Ham with praise, only for the hamster to hit him with some serious side-eye. The little guy hadn't forgotten how his master was just roasting him moments ago. So, Siegfried had to grovel, promising to buy him any treat he wanted. Just then, a powerful presence descended on them. A voice commented on how surprised he was by their accomplishment, making both the debuff master and the elemental mage jump. Siegfried, unable to sense this newcomer at all, instantly drew his weapon. He demanded the man identify himself, but the stranger just walked toward them slowly, saying he meant them no harm. The moment his face came into view, the hero froze in shock. He quickly composed himself, recognizing the man as the wounded guard they had rescued not too long ago. The guard then burst out laughing, admitting his epic entrance was totally botched, because he forgot to change out of his disguise. With that, the man stated that it was a pleasure to meet the debuff master. He paused, a smirk playing on his lips, then corrected himself, calling the protagonist by his real name. In a flash, our hero lunged at the stranger, demanding to know who he really was. The man simply introduced himself as Wu Jin Chong, which the system was supposed to reveal, but our protagonist's patience was wearing thin because he wasn't getting the answers he demanded, prompting Wu Jin Chan to call him out for being so reckless. That's when the shapeshifter decided to drop a little reminder for the kid, explaining the one and only reason the system was gatekeeping his name, as he unleashed a crushing aura that sent the debuff master staggering backward. In that instant, it clicked. Players on the shapeshifter's level could completely cloak their identity from anyone ranked beneath them. Realizing this, Tae Sung Han grilled the overleveled player, demanding to know why he bothered showing up with a fake name and a different face, since flexing like that was completely pointless in front of a lobby like him. And just like that, Wu Jin Chan apologized, admitting his own moves were a bit too hasty. The shapeshifter then revealed he only did it because he was intensely curious about our hero, this guy who acts like just another low-level scrub. But Wu Jin Chan saw right through it, declaring he was a legit standout, because he was none other than the one and only disciple of the legendary Master Dais. The shapeshifter then called our hero out on his lie, leaving him completely shook that his cover was blown. Still, Wu Jin Chan quickly put the kid at ease, promising that he was the only soul who knew his secret, and that he'd hit him up later, before adding that our hero should roll through Sinsadong if he wanted to know more. With that, the shapeshifter shot a look at the elemental mage and apologized for killing the vibe, but she gave him nothing back, just a cold, silent, empty stare. So, Wu Jin Chan flashed a practiced grin before taking off, wishing the two of them a great date and leaving our protagonist absolutely seething. An inferno of frustration started to churn inside him, the thought of being on some OP player's radar eating at him, and that frustration quickly morphed into a full-blown anxiety attack. because the debuff master couldn't bring himself to believe the man's word that he was truly the only one who knew his secret. This terrifying thought cracked open the door to an even worse possibility, that the Genesis Guild was watching him. And just as he was about to completely spiral, convinced his end was near, he got smacked clean across the face by his party member, which left him totally stunned. The elemental mage bluntly stated that she had zero clue what his deal was. Gohyaran then swore that she didn't care about a single thing, the shapeshifter said, and that she definitely hadn't recorded him or snapped any pictures. Then she tried to calm the protagonist down, gently promising that his worst nightmare wasn't going to happen. And Han decided to jump in, backing up his master by swearing that if things went south, he'd be right there to have his back. Hearing this, the weight on our hero's shoulders finally lifted, and after cracking a relieved smile, he shot a genuine thank you to both of his allies. After all that drama, our hero logged out of the hidden dungeon, going his separate way from his party member, who planned to stick around the ruins and grind out some experience. Meanwhile, our hero ditched the game entirely. Despite the morale boost from his friends, he was still consumed by the terrifying thought that his personal info could get leaked. And with that, the exhausted Tae Sung Han was left completely clueless about his next move. Then, 3 days after the whole ordeal, Woo Jin Chan finally hit him up, telling him to ask for him at a place called Club Heaven, in Sinsadong, at the stroke of midnight. Later that night, walking through the Gangnam district, our protagonist couldn't help but think how insane this high-level player had to be, wanting to have a serious talk in the middle of a nightclub. It dawned on our hero then that it had been ages since he'd been out this late. While other people were living it up at parties, he was glued to his screen, grinding in a game. Soon enough, Tae Sung Han found himself standing in front of the spot the high ranker had picked. The young man felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach, worrying that the bouncer would take one look at him and tell him to get lost, since he'd literally never set foot in a club. And his fear immediately became reality. He was denied entry because of his cheap-looking outfit. Tae Sung Han tried to play it cool, explaining he was just there to meet someone and would be in and out. But that only seemed to make the bouncer even more irritated. Just then, some guy walking past snarkily commented that it was his first time ever seeing a sweatshirt inside heaven, and his friend pointed out that our hero could totally hear them. But the first guy shot back that he didn't care, as he flipped him the bird and mockingly waved the protagonist away. But right as pure rage started to boil over, the young adventurer was approached by a familiar face, who turned out to be the over-leveled player himself, who immediately clowned the kid for his trashy outfit, guessing it was the best he owned. Then the heckler's friend quickly apologized, claiming he had no idea the kid in the sweatshirt was there to meet him. He even added that his friend had clearly never been to a club before, and that if it were him, he would have decked the guy, which just pissed the bully off. The dude who had been mocking our protagonist was absolutely floored, having no clue the guy he was flipping off was actually with Woo Jin Chan. And with a single, cold glance from the famous high ranker, the bully knew they had just gotten themselves permanently blacklisted. A moment later, our hero's eyes flutter open in the heart of Singcheon-dong, where thunderous music is shaking the walls, and the crowd is absolutely electric. Heaven Club is a raging inferno of dancing bodies, but inside the VIP room, an unnerving quiet hangs in the air, as Woo Jin Chen offers our hero a choice between Armand and Dom Perignon. He even asks if he'd prefer something else, but our hero just admits he's never even heard of these high-end drinks. He follows up by saying he isn't there for champagne, which prompts the shapeshifter to joke that he must be there to hit the dance floor. Our guy is not amused in the slightest, his voice dropping low as he tells him to get to the point. Woo Jin Chen puts on a show of apologizing for the joke, just as Tae Sung Han demands to know who he is and exactly why he was brought here. The over-leveled player just grins, admitting it's only fair to give him some answers, especially since he totally crashed his date. And then he drops the bomb. He's a guardian, and the face he wore during their last encounter actually belonged to one of his colleagues, a colleague who was killed while trying to break out of the lab. As the reality sinks in that Woo Jin Chen literally stole a dead man's identity, Tae Sung declares that what he did is completely unforgivable, but the shapeshifter feels zero remorse, claiming it was all worth it to orchestrate this meeting, which makes a light bulb go off in Tae Sung's head. He puts two and two together. It's because he's a student of Daya. Woo Jin Chen confirms it, adding he was curious to check out the power of another hidden class user. Tae Sung is totally floored by this revelation. This ridiculously powerful guy also has a hidden class of a similar rank? With that stunning news, our protagonist figures the guy must have used his own rare class to dig up info on him. Woo Jin Chen, however, shoots that theory down, casually stating he just threw a bunch of money around to uncover his private information. That bombshell catches our hero completely off guard, but the rich kid quickly promises he won't leak the info to anyone else. He brags that he's the only one in the know, all thanks to his real-world power, as Tae Sung Han just listens silently. The powerful player then admits he's paranoid about Genesis finding out about either of them, since they're both currently flying under the guild's radar. So, the debuff master flips the script, demanding to know the shapeshifter's class since he clearly knows everything about him. But Wu Chen just smirks, telling him he's still way too weak to handle that information, which only fuels our hero's irritation. The rich guy explains that he wants him to get much stronger, and only then will he reveal everything. He'll tell him once he's truly earned the title of Daya's student. Sometime later, the great forest spirit materializes to greet her master. After a long pause, Tae Sung-han asks his companion if she stayed out of trouble while he was gone. She confidently replies that she did, because unlike him, she's not a troublemaker. His servant then asks if he settled his real-world business, but he can't seem to find the right words to answer. The shapeshifter vanished without giving him any real answers, leaving him to wonder what his true endgame is. And right as his mind is spiraling, trying to puzzle out the overleveled player's true intentions, the spirit chimes in with a question. She asks him why on earth they're in a place like this, which seems way too seedy for a simple guy like him. And before the protagonist can even get a word out, she teases him about having some flashy secret desires, which he immediately denies. He explains that this city, Dandegri, also known as the City of Pleasures, is a massive hub for every kind of gambling and adult service in existence. But the debuff master is only interested in one of its attractions, the black market. Tae Sung-han clarifies that this is just a quick in-and-out mission to buy and sell some gear, much to the spirit's obvious disappointment. But just then, the debuff master spots two guys in familiar uniforms and his posture stiffens. It's the Genesis Guild. The young man immediately realizes the two are abusing their guild's reputation to shake down some poor guy just trying to walk by. It's their classic move. Even though every fiber of his being wants to step in and wreck them, he forces himself to abandon the thought. As his spirit gives him a look that screams coward, the player reasons that it's smarter to avoid a pointless battle. Our protagonist silently vows that he'll crush them another day. For now, he says, they need to focus on their own business. Across the way, the Genesis thug lays into the old man. He tells him they heard he found some incredible loot, and they just want a little peek, but his words are met with pure, defiant silence. He's starting to get pissed. His partner suggests that the old man must be using an item to hide his power. The fact that the Rune of Insight shows absolutely nothing on him is just ridiculous. But the lead bully tells his cowardly friend Chulugi to relax, because even if the old geezer is secretly overleveled, any trouble they start automatically becomes the entire guild's problem. Then the bully gestures to the onlookers. Not a single person would dare to get involved because their authority here is absolute. One of them pokes the old man's chest. He sneers that his silence must mean he's terrified of them. In the next instant, a fist smashes brutally into his face, by none other than our boy, Tae Sung-han, who sent the punk absolutely flying. He tells them to cut the trash talk, spitting that they aren't scaring anyone. The dude's friend tries to flex, name-dropping the Genesis Guild, which only ignites our hero's fury even more. Tae Sung-han just scoffs. That's even more reason to wreck you. He roasts them, saying they're nothing without their guild's clout, prompting Ham Ham to tease him. Yo, I thought we were dipping? Tae Sung-han snaps that the hamster totally baited him into it, but Ham Ham just claims he was trying to help him out. You know, let him vent all that pent-up anger. He then faces the old man, telling him not to sweat the Genesis Guild. He gets nothing but silence in return, and figures the guy must actually be mute. But then Ham Ham chimes in. The hamster asks if he's not even a little worried about the massive Genesis Guild hunting him down. But our boy says they're good. He's convinced they're way too humiliated to snitch on him. Satisfied with the day's work, the hero decides to trade in his loot and get back on the grind. All the while, the silent old man watches him go, a flicker of intrigue in his eyes. Shortly after, at the local adventurer hotel, our hero steps into a private training lounge, and the hamster's mind is blown, screaming about how massive the place is, especially since it looked so tiny from the outside. Tae Sung-han breaks it down. This is where adventurers come, to sharpen their skills and tune their gear, even if it costs a fortune. That's the cue for the great forest spirit to make his move. He dramatically leaps off his master's shoulder, and with a flourish, deploys his infinite bundle. The debuff master calls him out for being so extra with a piece of cloth, but Ham Ham fires back that he should just let him have this. I mean, it's pretty much his only skill, but something piques Ham Ham's curiosity. His master bought a ton of weapons, when his go-to has always been a blunt one. Tae Sung-han explains that it wasn't a choice, he just used whatever was convenient. But now, it's crunch time. The system is nagging him to lock in a main weapon, since he's closing in on level 50. Out of the 5 weapon types his hidden class allows, he's leaning towards sticking with blunt weapons. It's the style he has the most experience with. Still, our hero decides to keep an open mind. He summons a shadow boxer to the field, a training dummy with endless stamina and some serious defensive stats. Tae Sung-han decides to test out the shield first. He charges the shadow boxer, bashing it with the shield before laying into it with his fists and the shield's edge. The hero is impressed with the damage output, but he's not feeling the sluggish speed, so he ditches it and picks up the colossal greatsword. But after 2 solid hours of this, the hamster starts whining that his master has been testing weapons forever. Our protagonist is completely drained and getting nowhere. None of the weapons feel right. They all have their own pros and cons, which basically cancels each other out, putting them all on the same mediocre tier. Just as he's about to give up and stick with the blunt weapon, a voice cuts in, telling him that everything he's doing is pointless. He instantly recognizes the old man he saved from those Genesis thugs earlier. His mind immediately leaps to a conclusion. This shapeshifter must be the one who got him access to this high-end training space. So he asks him straight up, "Are you a guardian, or did Woojin Chenner send you?" But the old man completely ignores him, demanding to know why the young man rescued him, even though there was clearly nothing in it for him. Still, Tae-sung Han holds his ground, saying he should get his answer first. But he's left totally stunned when the old man roars for an answer. After a tense silence, the protagonist finally speaks. He explains it wasn't out of pity. The old man just reminded him of his past self of being completely powerless against those at the top. Then the young fighter declares that now, he wants to face that past head-on. That simple, honest explanation sparked something in the old man's eyes. He's satisfied, and reveals his true identity, Shikario, a level 354 NPC, famously known as the Weapon Master from the Stellar 5, is about to give the debuff master a serious power-up. You see, Shikario was a legendary warrior and a member of Stellar 5, the same crew as Withal Goose. The old-timer earned his Weapon Master title by conquering a staggering 18 different weapons, and in that moment, it all clicked for Tae-sung Han. The straw hat the man was wearing was masking his legendary identity from Rune of Insight. Our hero is absolutely buzzing. 2 members of the legendary Stellar 5 are now trying to make him their disciple. This is insane. And yet, he has to refuse the offer. Just as he's about to say no, the old man speaks up, pointing out that it's only natural for a talent like him to already have a master. Instead, he offers to just lend the protagonist a helping hand in choosing his weapon, because teaching doesn't always have to be a master and student deal. And Shikario then clarifies that he only wants to help, not officially take him on as a disciple, which leaves the young man completely stunned. He was blown away by the weapon master's sheer charisma. Our hero knew the man was spitting facts, because he knew his other master, Doyce, would just flex and claim that he was the ultimate weapon and that some noob student was the one who actually needed a tool. With that, our hero was convinced this legend from Stellar 5 would lead him to his one true soul weapon. At that, the Weaponmeister whipped out an item that left our hero absolutely floored. He dropped a truth bomb, asking why any man would settle for just one weapon. Shikuro then declared that from this day forward, our hero would command every single weapon in his class's arsenal at will, because the artifact he held was the mythic-grade Megingjurth. This was a replica of the belt belonging to Balak, the god of war from the creation myths, and it was packed with a ton of special abilities. Now, items in this game were divided into 8 ranks, starting from normal and going all the way up to world. But that world tier was so rare that players questioned if it even existed, which made the mythic item before him the highest known rank in the game. Still, our hero couldn't wrap his head around getting an item this broken, but Shikuro just smirked, explaining that wasn't exactly the deal. Once he put it on, it was soulbound to him forever. That's when it hit our debuff master. He was already the student of another master. Even so, he bowed deeply out of respect for the senior warrior, a gesture that clearly amused the old man, since no one who wasn't his official disciple had ever done that before. With the formalities over, our hero greedily reached for the belt, thanking the old man profusely, only for his hand to grasp at empty air every single time. The frustration started to bubble up, especially when the Stellar 5 member roasted him, comparing him to a clumsy pet he once owned. Being clowned on like this was humiliating. Shikuro then explained the massive difference between simply using an item and actually depending on it to survive. That line snapped him back to reality. Finally, getting that god-tier loot comes with a price. The hero was told to follow the old master. The scene cuts, we see a warrior slam another to the ground. The announcer is going wild. This is the Dundee battling Colosseum, and our protagonist realizes, with a sinking feeling, what the old man wanted all along, for him to become a gladiator. Shikuro then nonchalantly mentioned that the Colosseum was a pretty decent arena, making it the perfect stage to clash with all kinds of fighters. The old master then laid out his logic. Battling humans and humanoids was infinitely more effective for mastering a weapon than just grinding on mindless monsters. And while our hero couldn't argue with that logic, he still had his reservations, mainly because the arena's champion was some level 65 NPC. He could probably obliterate in seconds. Unfazed, the old man tossed him a gift that instantly unfurled and wrapped itself around his body, freaking out both our hero and his little hamster. It took a second for Tae Sung Han to realize this was an extremely revealing set of armor. The old man just grinned, remarking that those were the best kind anyway. And with a shove, he pushed him toward his match. He then added that only basic attacks were allowed inside the ring. Tae Sung Han simply nodded. He declared that once he demolished the level 65 NPC, that mythical belt was his, a boast that made the old warrior chuckle at his confidence. As he walked into the arena, our hero couldn't help but think about how badly the old man was underestimating him, sending him in with a no-skills rule and an unfamiliar weapon. Little did he know, our protagonist had mastered countless weapons during the war against Genesis and had insane stats for his level, thanks to Joyce's hellish training. This trial was going to be an absolute cakewalk. With that decided, the hyped-up hero prepared to steamroll the champion and claim his mythical prize as the roar of the crowd filled the air. Then the announcer's voice boomed, introducing the contestants and presenting our hero as Wimpy Man. The nickname hit him with a wave of pure cringe. He knew instantly that the old troll from Stellar 5 was the one behind this epic embarrassment. Just then, a voice sneered that the protagonist's scrawny appearance really fit the name, before asking if he wanted to be put down fast and clean, or slow and painfully. Standing before him was none other than the level 37 mimic NPC, Mickey, also feared as the slaughtering scythe. But our hero, who was leagues above him, just smirked back. "Shouldn't I be the one asking you that?" And with that ice-cold response, Mickey lunged forward, but our hero blocked the attack effortlessly before coolly asking about the blood of the mimic's race, wondering aloud if the monster bled red or some other freaky color. But just as our hero moved in for the finishing strike, the debuff armor finished its scan of the mimic's stats and, with a vicious nerve, jolted our hero with a massive surge of electricity. As our hero crashed to the ground, the commentator screamed, thinking his opponent had landed a devastating blow. But Tae Sung Han was completely stunned. That paralyzing shock could not have come from the slaughtering scythe. The scythe's brutal strike landed, and in that electrifying moment, the horrifying truth crashed down on him. This was the armor's crippling debuff at work. It unleashes pure agony on its user, massively nerfing them against any opponent they dare to face. A sight that had Mickey absolutely vibing. He jeered that his foe got precisely what was coming to him, then hurled the very same question back at the insect that the human had asked him moments before. The only catch? This time, the humanoid creature knew exactly what color the human's blood was. But just as the monster lunged for the finishing blow, our hero managed a heart-stopping evasion at the very last second. The creature roared that it was nothing but a fluke, bellowing that the kid wouldn't be able to dodge his next assault. Tae Sung Han was so over it, declaring he had way too much on his plate to deal with this and demanding the monster to just shut up. As it charged him, the humanoid parried the strike with ease, sneering that it wouldn't be harmed by such pathetic, flimsy attacks. The armor's curse sent the protagonist flying backward, and the sheer irritation on the young man's face completely eclipsed his agony. He watched himself become just slow enough to be tagged by the mimic, forcing him to question why that legendary NPC gave him this cursed armor in the first place. Surely, the old man's goal was something more than to just mess with him. With that realization, our hero decided to completely switch up his tactics. He then dug his heels deep into the arena floor, announcing that it was time to go back to the fundamentals. Even his hamster chimed in, pointing out how poorly his master was performing today, considering he could normally sidestep these kinds of attacks in his sleep. This led Shakuro to think the spirit was concerned for him, but the little guy clarified that he actually wanted to see his master suffer through the struggle. The Weaponmeister could only blink, realizing their dynamic was, let's just say, complicated. According to the legendary warrior, the handicap from the debuff armor was the single best way for a person to truly comprehend their weapon. This meant that the protagonist, stripped of his incredible physical prowess, would have to forge a deeper connection with the very nature of his blade. And you bet Shakuro was thrilled to see how the guy who was always holding all the cards would handle being dealt such a terrible hand. Now finding himself on the wrong side of the blade, the man was completely shell-shocked as a spray of blood painted the arena floor. The debuff master had whipped his sword around and cleanly severed the monster's left arm, leaving the mimic utterly stunned. It unleashed a blood-curdling scream of pure agony, but while the humanoid was still reeling, the human pointed something out. This colossal sword was infinitely harder to wield than he'd anticipated, but Tae Sung Han coolly informed the beast that he would be taking its other arm very soon. Fueled by those words, Mickey was engulfed by a firestorm of absolute rage. It was then obvious to everyone that by dismembering his opponent, our hero had now seized complete control of the battle. The old fencing master was so blown away that he completely lost his composure. He was in awe of how the young man had unlocked the secrets of the giant sword in such an insanely short amount of time. This devastating weapon saddles its user with a crippling slowing debuff, and it was an even bigger nightmare for him since he was nerfed against a lightning-fast opponent. Yet, the swordsman found the solution by treating the massive blade like a mobile shield, constantly shifting his position behind its cover. This was a brilliant strategy to expose the mimic's weak points, a technique that could never be learned from any teacher. It was born from pure, unadulterated instinct and a burning desire to win at all costs. In that moment, the Weaponmeister knew that the young man possessed the raw talent to one day surpass him. While Mickey was getting seriously triggered by this tactic, it all finally clicked for the upstart. The old man must have engineered this entire scenario to force him to grasp the weapon's true potential. Indeed, he was certain that one key detail had always eluded him: the fact that he was consistently on the losing end of every fight. Because of that, he had cultivated a survivor's instinct to use everything in his environment to claw his way to victory. Right as the mantis lunged in to finish him off, he dodged at the last possible second, leaving its massive claw completely stuck in the ground. The debuff master recalled his own vow about taking the mimic's other arm, and just like that, he sliced it clean off. And so, the insect let loose one final, agonizing shriek of pain before it crashed to the ground, utterly defeated. And with that, the commentator's voice boomed across the stadium, declaring the victor to be Wimpy Man, earning our hero a massive roar from the crowd. Meanwhile, a boss asked his goons if the protagonist was the same person who beat them to a pulp, and a member of Genesis Guild confirmed it. Their leader demanded to know if the fight was really that one-sided, though the bully tried to make excuses for himself. He whined that he was only kicked in the stomach. His boss, furious, started beating him down, screaming that they were a constant source of shame. But right then, a VIP member from the City of Pleasure, Cholgi Choi from the Genesis Guild, had a flash of recognition, realizing he'd seen the protagonist before. And so he asked for the fighter's name, which was revealed to be Siegfried. The boss muttered that he knew someone who looked just like him, as the goon added that he was with the old man he had saved earlier. He then asked what the game plan was, so Cholgi Choi declared that they should just ambush and crush them both. The man in the red coat warned that this would be incredibly difficult, considering the old man was none other than the legendary Weaponmeister. So when asked if he was absolutely sure, the man in red confirmed it, saying he spotted him hiding among the spectators, which had the boss absolutely captivated by his appearance in the Colosseum. He then spilled the tea that this guy is basically a legendary treasure hunter, and wherever he lingers the longest, a massive score is sure to follow. Hearing this, the VIP member was practically vibrating with excitement, realizing a legendary treasure must be hidden inside the Colosseum right now. Cholgi Choi's mind flashed back to what the man in red said, admitting that taking out the old man would be a challenge, but definitely doable. The guy had explained that no one could touch the shock hero when he was in his prime, but now, he was a shadow of his former self, and the crowd absolutely erupted. As the brutal fight raged on, then Ho Chul, the reigning champion of the arena, stepped up. He smirked, telling his opponent he was lucky to face him after a whole week, but that luck was about to run out and seal his doom. Swearing he wouldn't leave the ring alive, he lunged at the challenger, who expertly weaved around every single blow. Tai Sun Han just grinned, explaining that his boxing background made him a beast at one specific thing: dismantling aggressive fighters, just like this NPC. He landed a clean hook to the head, and you could practically feel the champion's brain rattle in his skull, sending him crashing to the canvas. And with that, Ho Chul tasted his first ever loss, crowning our hero the new king of the arena. The crowd couldn't stop buzzing about how hype the hero's fights were. He was a master of the comeback, and was constantly switching up his arsenal. The commentator rushed over to the new champ, hyping him up for conquering the arena in just 1 week. He then asked him what was going through his head with this new title. Siegfried then dropped a bombshell, announcing he was dipping from the Colosseum for good. Later, at the Intervention Hotel, the young man was strapping on a belt, and it was none other than the mythical item he was promised. In that moment, the Megangjord was officially his, molding itself perfectly to his waist. It was then he finally understood why people drop so much cash on designer clothes. Rocking a mythical grade item just hit different. The old man smirked, noticing how stoked he looked after putting on the belt. The Weapon Master then apologized for missing his championship win, before throwing some shade about his lightning-fast retirement. Our hero just shrugged it off, saying the whole thing was a cakewalk. This sent the old man into a fit of laughter, claiming he had a way rougher time becoming the Colosseum's champion back in his day. He even confirmed the kid's suspicions, revealing he kicked off his warrior journey a whole century ago, right here at the local Colosseum. It was pointed out that the elder was basically a gladiator, but the man explained he had ulterior motives, saying he only wanted to use his skills to make a quick buck before claiming the fights were way more hardcore in his era, making the hero realize this old dude was just like the boomers back in his world. Yet when asked if the arena was why he stayed in the City of Pleasures, The weapon master shot that down, revealing his return was sparked by something else entirely. With that said, he invited the young warrior to take a walk. A short while later, just outside the city, the two heroes arrived at their destination, the Forgotten Mines of Dondagiri, a place the warrior had never even heard of. The protagonist demanded to know why they were there, prompting the old man to ask if he was familiar with the three great ateliers. Of course, the debuff master confirmed it, saying that literally everyone knew about them. So the old-timer pressed him, asking if he knew about Bamarlian's special department. And it clicked. Tae Sung-han instantly knew he was talking about a member of the Stellar Five, the birthplace of death. A legendary department within the Great Atelier that forged unimaginably powerful weapons. Most of the best weapons on the continent were hammered out right there. The old man explained that in the birthplace of death, one creator was leagues above everyone else, a blacksmith by the name of Herbert. This dude had a terrifying obsession with weapons, so much so that he was rumored to have learned to paint just so he could capture the exact moment his creations took a life, which totally blew the kid's mind. Herbert, the architect of countless deadly weapons, embarked on a final journey to create his strongest and ultimate masterpiece. And Shakiro revealed that a piece of the map leading to that legendary weapon was buried deep within the Forgotten Mines. But according to his intel, the actual map was split into two pieces and sent to two different locations, with the other half's whereabouts a complete mystery. That's when Siegfried realized the old man must have been laying low in the Pleasure City's black market just to gather this intel. He then explained that this was precisely what led to their first meeting, which made the younger man feel a bit cringe, remembering how he flexed his puny powers in front of a legend. The messenger of weaponry then continued, explaining that, while our hero was busy playing gladiator, he had finally locked down intel, pinpointing the map's location within these very mines. The cramped tunnel ahead suddenly explodes into a massive cavern, and in that instant, the younger fighter knew exactly what was coming. A monstrous claw erupts from the very ground beneath them, then another and another, as creatures spawn from the shadows, trapping both warriors inside a full-blown dungeon. The veteran casually claims there are only a few mobs, but the rookie, eyes wide with panic, scans the horde and insists it's a massive swarm. He whips around, totally bewildered, and demands to know why the old man never mentioned they were diving headfirst into a dungeon. The challenger frantically explains that his limit is a single level 150 beast on his own, like the terrifying Chimera O-154, a horrifying cyborg monstrosity stitched together from the parts of different monsters. Unfazed, the old master just smirks, promising to push the kid to his absolute limits. Even knowing the master's insane power, the young man screams a warning as the cyborg beast starts charging up a devastating attack. But the elder calmly explains, this is his duty, a way to make up for stunting the kid's growth for a week by forcing him to grind in the arena. And with a single, blinding flash of steel, the Chimera O-154 is obliterated. As the EXP floods his system, a sudden realization hits the protagonist. The genius fighter didn't bring him here to fight. He dragged him here for a god-tier power leveling session. The old warrior announces he's taking point and asks if the kid can even keep up, before becoming a blur of motion, slicing through one chimera after another. He carves a path directly through the cybernetic abominations, leaving the young fighter absolutely speechless at the display of power. He skyrockets 2 whole levels in an instant, feeling a rush of pure joy. This kind of EXP gain was something he couldn't even dream of, not even if he hired the most expensive professional piggybacking service. For a moment, Siegfried actually found himself regretting not bringing his hamster along for the loot. He spots some epic loot dropping from a monster. Just like that, our hero smashes through to level 50, triggering the unlock of a brand new skill. It's called Proof of Existence, a passive that massively boosts his damage against any nerfed enemy, and his mind starts racing. This new skill could be the game changer he needed to take on opponents way above his pay grade. As he spots a small monster nearby, thinking it's the perfect test subject, to his absolute shock, the creature's body begins to twist and morph into something completely different. It reveals its true form, Chimera 007, a ridiculously rare monster known for its shape-shifting abilities. It uses this trick to disguise itself as a weak, helpless creature to bait players into a trap. But in that same second, the old master draws his blades. In a flash, he dices the monster into 1,000 pieces. The Weaponmeister coolly explains that anyone who only trusts their eyes is doomed to fail. The rookie humbly agrees, admitting he has an incredible amount to learn. The veteran then declares that the area is almost completely cleared of monsters. He asks the hero for a status report, and he excitedly reveals he's gained a new skill and an insane amount of EXP. With a satisfied nod, the old man announces that it's time to hunt down the treasure, but the young man stops him, a burning question on his mind. The elder is a legend, rumored to possess 18 mythical weapons, So why was he only using a plain, ordinary sword this whole time? The kid was completely baffled. He then learns the shocking truth. The old master had disciples, and he gave all of his mythical weapons away to them. He explains that he has no clue where his students are now, and that he only took them under his wing because he was getting lonely on his journey. The youth's eyes fall upon the incredible belt the master is wearing as the man states he only gives the absolute finest gear to his students. This revelation only confuses the young man more. If the old master had lost interest in weapons, why was he still hunting for this legendary one? His brain short-circuits as he comes to a wild conclusion. The swordsman must be planning to gift it to him, leaving him utterly floored. It's not that the kid was ungrateful for the mythical belt, but the elder just laughs it off, explaining he only goes on these quests for the thrill of it. For him, the journey is always far more rewarding than the prize at the end. As the hero tries to wrap his head around what the old man just said, the veteran confirms it with a smile. This feeling is the pure satisfaction of the hunt. They continue onward in silence for a while. Both heroes finally come to a halt, standing before a pair of colossal, ancient doors. A massive letter M is carved into the stone, marking this as the birthplace of death. They were certain this was the spot to find a clue to the mad blacksmith's final weapon. And yet, our protagonist can't shake a weird feeling. There are absolutely no defenses, no traps, no guards in front of such an important place. He immediately assumes the real danger is waiting for them on the other side. But just as he turns to ask the old man for his opinion, his mentor suddenly doubles over, coughing up blood. The sight completely terrifies our hero. The young man rushes to his mentor's side, but the old warrior insists that everything is fine. He claims it's just a symptom of an illness he's had for years, which makes our hero remember how the old man was constantly coughing back in the real world. But just then, a third voice cuts in, a figure emerging from the shadows. Well, the stranger says, looking absolutely amazed. So the rumors about the legendary NPC finally dying were actually true. The voice sends a shiver down our hero's spine, as the man thanks the two of them for slaughtering all the monsters, he says. It made their path incredibly easy. This was none other than the infamous Divas Hunter, a top player from the Genesis Guild, known as Cholji Choi. The brute immediately recognizes the elder as a member of the legendary Stellar Five, and his partner as the new champion of the Colosseum, who introduces himself as Siegfried. Cholji Choi just smirks. The guy sneered, figuring the retired champ was there to stick up for the cronies he'd supposedly bullied. But the Genesis member just shrugged them off, saying he couldn't care less about those losers, then locked eyes with our hero, asking, "Have we met?" Our debuff master shot back that this was their first ever meeting, but the bully just leaned in, pointing out the uncanny resemblance to a certain someone's face. And a jolt of recognition hit Tai-Sun Han. He knew exactly who this was, the traitor who ripped off Beamer's entire fortune. This snake torched the safe house as he fled, and our hero was dead certain this was the same devious hunter who hired a mercenary to eliminate his rivals, a scumbag who poisoned everyone around him with his own corruption. But even looking at this despicable lowlife, Tai-Sun Han knew something more important. This loudmouth wasn't the final boss. The real threat, the one he had to watch out for, was the silent figure cloaked in red. It dawned on Siegfried that the masked mercenary was on a whole other level. He was the reason why. Neither he nor the old man had sensed their approach. He had to face it. He was completely and utterly outclassed. With no other option, he decided to stall for time, to give the old man a chance to recover, and turned his attention to Cholji Choi. He taunted him, asking if his guild even knew what he was up to, but got nothing but a sneer in return, prompting Siegfried to twist the knife. He jeered that Genesis would only ever dispatch a washed-up has-been to a dead-end place like this. He pushed further, saying the guild couldn't care less if he lived or died out here, and hearing that, the hunter's face contorted with pure rage. In that instant, a projectile screamed past our hero's head, grazing his ear, and before he could even process what just happened, the furious hunter had already blitzed across the room and slammed a devastating punch into him, sending our hero careening into the far wall. The old man feared the absolute worst, but the mercenary calmly noted that the kid was just trying to get under his skin, just trying to buy some time. But Cholji Choi was too far gone, blinded by a primal need to destroy the protagonist. He was going to do it with his own two hands. Seeing this raw bloodlust, the mercenary figured his boss wouldn't be needing any help, so the hunter ordered him to just watch the old man while he handled the hero personally, a command that brought a wave of relief over our MC. The hunter's short fuse had just saved him from a 2-versus-1 nightmare, and he figured the one in red was only in it for the money. The new plan was simple: eliminate the employer, then turn around and make the mercenary a better offer. He'd outbid the current contract and buy himself an escape. But that strategic daydream was brutally cut short. An enemy fist glowing with raw mana rocketed toward his face, forcing him into a last-second, desperate dodge. The brute immediately grabbed his spear and unleashed a deadly arc through the air, but our hero ducked under the attack once more. A slow, impressed grin spread across Cholji Choi's face as he declared the champ had definitely earned his title in the Colosseum. While evading the onslaught of attacks, our hero's mind was racing, analyzing his opponent's every move. The guy was a true master of the lance, funneling mana into its tip to create devastating, wide-range assaults. But even so, our protagonist felt a surge of confidence that he could win this, and summoned the perfect weapon for the job. Activating Quick Draw, he slammed his new weapon into his opponent, leaving the hunter completely stunned. He just materialized a weapon from thin air and was dishing out damage that blew past anything a typical level 50 player could manage. But the hunter dug his heels in, twisting his body to unleash a furious counterthrust with his spear, only for a shield to suddenly appear and deflect the blow, leaving the attacker even more bewildered than before. Our hero tapped into the belt's power again, instantly swapping the defensive shield for a heavy, blunt weapon. And just that easily, he kept using Quick Draw, constantly cycling through an entire arsenal to gain a crushing advantage over his enemy. The hunter was too slow, totally unable to counter the weapons appearing and disappearing at the speed of light, making him realize the kid, who was now gripping a massive greatsword, must have been hiding his true power all along. With that thought, our hero landed the final, decisive blow. It left the hunter paralyzed, and the old man could only stare, completely floored at how masterfully the kid was using the belt. For his first time, he totally dominated his opponent with overwhelming speed. And in that moment, both the member of Stellar 5 and the mercenary in red knew, with absolute certainty, that this young man was destined to surpass them both. The mercenary then turned to the mentor, remarking that his new disciple was quite capable and must be a real pleasure to train. The veteran shot a threat right back, but the red-cloaked figure just waved it off, saying his warnings were completely hollow. Knowing full well that people could sense his power to snuff them out in an instant, the shadowy merc leaned in and asked the old man why he wasn't sensing any killing intent, even with Herbert's legendary weapon right there in his hands. The mercenary cut straight to the chase, demanding to know about the second piece of the map, giving the elder no way out. He had to reveal its location, but he decided he was going to add a condition of his own. All the while, our hero let his greatsword dematerialize, and started daydreaming about the powers of the mythical belt, which felt totally foreign right now, but he knew it would one day supercharge his strength. But just as our guy turned to leave, thinking his opponent was clapped, he gets hit with a barrage of insults. The scummy hunter starts screaming that the debuff master is a dirty cheater, absolutely fuming that he got completely owned despite their massive level difference. Our hero was totally stunned to see the guy still had some fight left in him. He remembered him being way weaker than this. And with that, Choi barks at the mercenary to finish off the champion and the old man, but the dude in red just scoffs, calling him out for needing backup after getting his butt handed to him. Everyone was left shook when the mercenary straight up ignored the order, but the spearman wasn't having it, demanding the merc obey, reminding him of the fat stacks of cash he'd already been paid. That's when the mercenary explains he's hunting for Herbert's ultimate weapon, not just a paycheck. He admits he only took the job to use the Genesis Guild's name for his own clout. Hearing this, Cholgi Choi declares that the merc has just made an enemy of Genesis. The guy in red basically says, "Like I care," since he plans to dip the second he gets the map, before pointing out that his employer had already been dropped by Genesis, leaving Cholgi Choi in a full-blown panic, completely speechless. Then the man throws an absolute tantrum, whining about being sent to the City of Pleasures, complaining there was no reason for him to go there. But the man in the chair just confirms it's a direct order from the guildmaster, adding that they'll give him more than enough cash to have a good time over there. Still, Cholgi Choi insisted he deserved respect after paying a fortune to join the guild, but the man just reminds him he used money that he straight up jacked from Beamer, and the bully's excuses were totally useless. So in the end, the man tells him he should have just stayed with his old guild instead of backstabbing them, if he can't handle how they do business. Now, back in the present, pure rage explodes in the scummy hunter's eyes, as he screams that he wasn't abandoned and that the City of Pleasures was beneath him. With a roar, he slams his spear deep into the ground, pouring all of his mana into it. Our hero is startled, realizing the brute has completely snapped, and is about to bring the entire cave down on top of them. The hunter then lunges, aiming a devastating strike right at our protagonist, who dodges out of the way at the very last second. And with that opening, Siegfried launches himself forward, charging the bully before cracking him across the face so hard his weapon goes flying from his grip. To our hero, the man before him was nothing but a despicable traitor, no matter what sob story he had. And so, he decides to serve the traitor a taste of his own medicine, a little payback for his past treachery, by finishing him off with his very own weapon. Just like that, our protagonist unleashes Flying Spur, launching the spear, and skewering the man right in front of him, sending him rocketing into the giant door. And just like that, the man who once betrayed our hero finally got what was coming to him. But as the door shatters from the impact, something emerges from the darkness behind it. Suddenly, our protagonist gets a system notification for clearing the dungeon, telling him to claim his reward as the final chamber is revealed, with a treasure chest now sitting right in front of him. Tae-sung-han knew it instantly. The map to the ultimate masterpiece was inside that chest. But the mercenary declares that he'll be the one taking that map, making our hero realize they were all hunting for the exact same prize. Still, the old man calmly tells him to surrender, stating that he holds the rights to the map. And Shakuro finally recognizes the man in red by his gear and his infamous title, the Crimson Cardinal, who gives a nod of respect, impressed that a member of the legendary Stellar Five actually knew who he was. According to the old-timer, this guy was an inquisitor from the office cult, and someone who had only recently achieved the rank of master. Then, just as the swordsman points out that our hero stood no chance against him, he's stunned to learn about his cult, since it's the same one that psycho-scientist who tried to revive the python belongs to. With a smirk, the Crimson Cardinal says the debuff master is getting lucky, since he's being spared, thanks to a deal he already struck with the old man. But Siegfried demands to know what's going on, so Shakuro explains that he traded the treasure in exchange for their lives. And though he absolutely hates it, the young man has no other option but to accept. He knew they stood zero chance against a monster like that, not as an ailing old man and a low-level rookie. The reality of it all left our protagonist cursing his own powerlessness. Then the Crimson Cardinal points out that, as cheesy as it sounds, life itself is the most valuable treasure of all, before turning to the old man and asking about the second piece of the map, to which the old man just shrugged, claiming he was in the dark too. But then, a sly grin, he revealed he had a way to force its location out, which immediately snagged the Cardinal's attention. According to the old-timer, a guy named Herbert had laced the map with a tracking spell, one that would make the two halves scream out the other's location once it was activated. Hearing this, the Crimson Cardinal demanded to know if he could actually pull it off, slapping the first piece of the map down. He leaned in close, his voice a low growl, warning the old man that his patience was wearing dangerously thin and not to even think about playing him for a fool. Without another word, the member of Stellar Five dove into the spell's code, his hands a blur of motion, leaving our protagonist absolutely stunned. Bro, this wasn't just any spell. It was the legendary spell of pursuit. The man in red just stared, baffled at how ridiculously OP these blacksmiths must have been, to slap such a god-tier enchantment on a little scrap of paper. And with the final piece of the incantation falling into place, the map lit up, ready to expose the second piece's secret location. The scrap of parchment began to pulse, vibrating in sync with our hero, revealing the insane truth. He was the one holding the other half. The system screamed at him to reunite the pieces, and in that instant, the minds of everyone in the room were collectively blown. Let's rewind a year and a half. The vibe was totally different. A dungeon raid had just wrapped, and the crew was seriously underwhelmed. Chu Ji-choi was the first to pop off, complaining about how all their grinding was for a handful of trash-tier rewards. His guildmate just sighed, confirming this was pretty much par for the course. Fired up, the short-tempered gamer shot a glare at his guildmaster, demanding they stop wasting time on these low-level raids. Our boy could only apologize, but just then, his eyes landed on a crumpled, torn piece of a map lying in the dirt. He picked it up and showed it to Jin Woo, asking if she knew what it was. She glanced at it, completely unimpressed, and told him to just toss the junk since it was worthless. But as his fingers brushed against it, our hero felt a faint flicker of mana, a tiny spark of hidden power. On a gut feeling, he pocketed it. Now, flash forward to the present. The memory hits him like a truck. He completely forgot about that legendary map piece collecting dust in his inventory for all these months. The old man glared, demanding to know what was going on. The kid quickly explained that he'd swiped it off some bandits, but had zero clue about its true, insane value. At this revelation, the Crimson Cardinal saw red. Convinced he was being scammed, he exploded in a flash of rage, launching an attack at them both. The old man threw up a shield, but the shockwave was immense. Our hero wasn't so lucky. A cry of pain ripped from his throat. Just like that, the debuff master was launched like a cannonball, slamming hard into the stone wall. Shakiro yelled for the cardinal to chill out, insisting he was reading the room all wrong. But the Crimson fanatic wasn't listening to a word of it. Convinced the old-timer was just trying to talk his way out of a casket, he snarled, spitting that he now regretted ever trying to make a deal in the first place. And in the next second, the man in red unleashed his ultimate skill, Barrier of Blood. A dome of pure, crimson energy trapped them. It was in that moment the old man knew they were never meant to walk out of this mine. The cardinal just smirked, explaining that this was just business. He had a job to do, and seeing as Shakiro was still a former member of the legendary Stellar Five, even past his prime. He was a loose end. Then he pointed at our protagonist, a kid with enough raw potential to become a serious threat to his cult. Better to snuff out the flame before it becomes an inferno. But the swordsman shot back that it was the cardinal, who was about to be erased, as he suddenly cancelled his own spell to lunge toward the protagonist. The move left the Crimson Cardinal shook. The old man had just effortlessly sliced through his solidified blood technique like it was butter. Before he could even process it, the ancient warrior closed the gap in a blink, unleashing a storm of devastating slashes. The cardinal barely blocked, realizing with dawning horror that if it wasn't for his high-tier armor, he'd be in pieces right now. This sick, washed-up old man was still a monster from the Stellar Five. The veteran warrior paused, explaining that the cardinal still had one out. He'd let him crawl away with his life, but only if he dropped the barrier right now. The offer just made the cardinal even more furious. The man sneered, telling the geezer not to get cocky just because of one little surprise attack. He spat that he hadn't even started to try for real. Hearing this, the old man just smirked, and a box of glowing weapons materialized from thin air. He then used his telekinesis to unsheath every single blade at once, declaring that he also had a few tricks left up his sleeve. For a second, the Crimson Cardinal looked impressed, praising the old man's slick mana control. But then he scoffed, saying that a bunch of standard-issue weapons would never be enough to win this fight. Even so, the Weaponmeister's eyes glinted with cold fire as he replied with two words: "They will."